Chapter 30-25. Song Yan and Baizhu joined the battle and attacked Ji Tianqing together with the other two high divine lords. The pressure on Ji Tianqing suddenly increased and his attacks slowed down. It was even harder for him to gain the upper hand and he had to defend himself and counterattack. Song Yan and Baizhu had not participated in the battle and were in their peak condition. The moment they attacked, they used all kinds of ultimate moves and their attacks were very fierce. However, their aura was like a drum of energy, then weakened and exhausted. After 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing blocked and neutralized all their ultimate moves. Their attacks also slowed down and the power of their attacks decreased a little. Only now did the battle stabilize and become peaceful. The strength of the two high divine lords was even weaker, especially the guy who had both his legs chopped off. He was already somewhat exhausted. Even Song Yan and Baizhu had used up a lot of their divine power. The pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced and he could easily deal with the attacks of the four people. Not far away, the 40-odd lower divine lords and the 50-odd imperial guards were also gradually deciding who was better. The third prince and the two imperial guards commanders were all 7th heaven realm high divine lords. The 50 imperial guards were slightly stronger than the low divine lords in terms of equipment and strength. Therefore, the imperial guards had a great advantage. Their battle formation was unbreakable and no matter how the low divine lords attacked, they could firmly block and neutralize them. As a result, the low divine lords could not threaten Ji Tianqing at all. However, even though the third prince and the imperial guards had the advantage, they did not take the initiative to attack and kill. They did not want to achieve anything only to avoid mistakes. The third prince did not want to annihilate the low divine lords and obtain victory. He only wanted to block the attacks of the high divine lords and protect Ji Tianqing. When the stalemate reached the end, he would negotiate with the fifth prince and save Ji Tianqing. That would be the end of his mission. The stalemate continued and the battle did not stop. The fifth prince became more and more anxious, and he could not help but attack Ji Tianqing from afar several times. He understood that there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. The fact that he had set up an ambush in West Wind Town and killed Ji Tianqing, there must be others who knew about it. If time dragged on for too long, it was inevitable that there would be variables. We can't go on like this. I have to think of a way to get rid of that brat as soon as possible. The fifth prince furrowed his brows and racked his brains for a countermeasure. However, right at this moment, a large expanse of colorful divine light flew over from the sky not far away. Swoosh! Swish, swish, swish. The dazzling divine light streaked across the sky and soon arrived at the valley. These people stopped at the edge of the battlefield and observed the situation. The people who came were not many, just 7, but they were all divine lord realm powerhouses. Among them there were 5 high-level god monarchs and 2 middle-level god monarchs of the 6th stage. The leader was a burly man wearing a golden python robe and a golden crown. This person had a dignified appearance. He had a pair of large eyes, white hair, and a goatee on his chin. It was the second prince. The 4 high-level god monarchs behind him were the chief of staff, Yan Long, a hunchbacked old man, and 2 generals wearing golden armor. As for the 2 middle-level god monarchs, they stood at the very back and did not attract much attention. The second prince's arrival caused Ji Tianqing, the third prince, and the fifth prince to reveal looks of surprise and complicated expressions. The fifth prince's gaze turned even more solemn and his expression turned even uglier. The third prince was stunned and subconsciously asked, "Second royal brother, what are you doing here? How did you find this place?" Only Ji Tianqing's reaction was very calm, as if he had long expected this result. The second prince stroked his beard, his expression dignified and his tone heavy as he said, "Old third, don't forget that this prince has control of the Divine Kingdom's largest information and intelligence organization. To put it immodestly, nothing that happens in Royal City can escape this prince's eyes and ears. What happened last night this prince already knows. Old third, both of us have underestimated Old Fifth's methods. He is unremarkable when he doesn't make a sound, but when he does he amazes everyone. In order to deal with young Master Tianqing, he actually used such a sinister and despicable move. This is really impressive." The second prince had a cold smile on his face and his tone was contemptuous and mocking. The fifth prince's face instantly became even longer. His gaze was cold as he shouted, "Old second, what are you trying to do?" The third prince had brought the imperial guards to help Ji Tianqing, and had already ruined his plan. Now that the second prince had also come to join in the fun, how could he not be angry? The second prince said with a smile, "Little fifth, young Master Tianqing is this prince's friend and his daughter is this prince's niece. Miss Wushuang is so smart and cute. This prince can't wait to dote on her. How can you do such a sinister and shameless thing? This is an insult to the ancestors of the royal family. This prince came today to rescue this prince's friend, young Master Tianqing, and this prince's little niece. If you dare to stop me, don't blame this prince for being impolite." Hearing this, the third prince sneered in his heart. The fifth prince was so angry that he gritted his teeth. "Second brother, you're the most shameless bastard of all. What relationship do you have with Tianqing? Everyone was well aware of this. Stop putting on an act here. You are just using this opportunity to target this prince." Since the truth had been exposed, the second prince was not angry. He smiled without changing his expression and said, "Yes, you guessed right, little fifth. But so what? This prince wants to take this opportunity to teach you a lesson and let you know that seniority is important. Don't be so complacent." After that, he stopped smiling and scolded sternly, "Little fifth, let young Master Tianqing go immediately and this prince will let bygones be bygones." The fifth prince did not expect that this second prince would openly fall out with him. He did not want to hide his embarrassment anymore. In his extreme anger, he sneered and said, "You want this prince to let him go? Dream on. What are you going to do?" The second prince stretched out his right hand and took out a magical sword embedded with 3 gems. He said with a murderous look, "Then this prince will have no choice but to snatch him. Furthermore, this bunch of lackeys of yours, none of them can think about leaving alive." When his voice faded, the second prince waved his sword and gave the order to attack. Those 6 Divine Lord powerhouses unsheathed their Kenshin weapons without hesitation and attacked the fifth prince's people. 4 high-level Divine Lords rushed toward those dozens of low-level Divine Lords, while the 2 middle-level Divine Lords massacred the celestial deity powerhouses around the battlefield. The moment the great battles started, divine light immediately exploded in the field. A loud noise shook the heavens. In less than 10 breaths of time, more than 30 of those celestial deity powerhouses were killed. The 100+ lucky survivors were horrified, hurriedly turning around and fleeing. This time they ignored the third prince's orders and really fled at the last minute. They spread out and fled in all directions. Very soon, they left the valley and disappeared without a trace. Those 2 middle-level Divine Lords did not give chase either. They turned around and charged toward that group of low-level Divine Lords. The second prince did not make a move. He just stood in the air and gave orders. The 6 Divine Lords under his command were not as fearful as the Imperial Guards. They all charged and killed with unparalleled bravery. More than 40 low-level Divine Lords were immediately met with a calamity of annihilation. Large numbers of casualties appeared within a short time. Seeing this scene, the third prince was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Chapter 30:26. When the second prince arrived at West Wind Town and sent experts to join the battle, the scales of victory had already tipped toward Ji Tianqing. The third prince had originally brought 300 heavenly gods with him. More than 100 of them had been killed, and the remaining 120 had fled without a trace. Only 40 or so lower Divine Lords and 4 higher Divine Lords were still bitterly holding on. The fierce battle continued for another 100 breaths of time. At this time, the 6 lower Divine Lords under the second prince's command had already killed or severely injured more than a dozen lower Divine Lords. In addition, the third prince and the Imperial Guards continued to attack and suppress the remaining lower Divine Lords. As a result, the remaining 30 or so lower Divine Lords fell into a desperate situation of life and death. If the battle continued, they would all die. The fifth prince had expected this and was as worried as ants on a hot pan. Not long after, Ji Tianqing found an opportunity to hack the monarch god, whose legs had been chopped off into pieces with his sword. This person was lucky enough to survive, but his godhead was severely injured and he fled the battlefield in a panic. Ji Tianqing wanted to chase after him, but Song Yan Baizhu and the other god lord hurriedly stopped him. It looked like the fifth prince's plan was about to fail. He could not help but swing his divine sword and personally attack Ji Tianqing. But at this moment, something unexpected happened. The 30 or so lower divine lords had already expended a large amount of divine power, and many of them were severely injured. Their bodies were drenched in blood. Suddenly, someone's face turned pitch black and black blood spurted out of his orifices as he let out a shrill scream. There were also people who coughed up blood and fell to the ground, twitching and spasming. At first, only 3 people were in such a state. But soon, one lower divine lord after another's body turned black and blood spurted out of their orifices as they fell to the ground. This symptom spread like a virus and quickly spread through the crowd. All kinds of blood spurting, blood vomiting, and miserable screams erupted in the sky, rising and falling one after another. There was no need for the second prince or the third prince to do anything. The 30 or so lower divine lords quickly lost their ability to fight. Everyone fell into the ruins, howling miserably in pain. They rolled on the ground, and large amounts of blood flowed out of their bodies. This sudden and unexpected event caused everyone to stop fighting, and they revealed expressions of astonishment and bewilderment. Everyone's gazes were gathered on those lower divine lords, unable to make sense of the situation. Only Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to attack Song Yan, Baizhu, and the others. A cold sneer flashed across his eyes. It's been half an hour since the start of the battle, and the poison has only erupted now. It's really well hidden. Without a doubt, those lower divine lords were all poisoned. Previously, Ji Tianqing had opened the 3rd floor of the divine pagoda and released the 3rd prince and the many imperial guards. He had originally thought that everyone would fight to the death. However, the 3rd prince was afraid of the 5th prince. He even argued with the 5th prince, dilly-dallying, and didn't want to fight. Thus, Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to release the 9 invisible poisons. In order to not alert the other party, he hid the poisons very well and spread them out silently. It wasn't just the lower divine lords. The 200 or so heavenly gods were also invisibly corroded by the poisons. However, the poisons had concealed themselves for a long time. After half an hour, the lower divine lords had exhausted more than half of their strength. Only then did the poison suddenly erupt. Although the poison had erupted a little late. However, its power was astonishingly terrifying. Once it erupted, there was no saving them. They would die without a doubt. Before long, those lower divine lords lying in the ruins, howling and rolling on the ground, had turned into pools of blood and died on the spot. Even their godheads had been corroded to pieces and scattered among the ruins. They were completely and utterly dead. 1, 2, 3. The lower divine lords on the ground were disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye, leaving behind only pools of blood. Such a horrifying scene made everyone's scalps go numb. This was especially so for the imperial guards. They all revealed looks of dread as they discussed amongst themselves through telepathy. The 3rd prince was also very puzzled, not understanding what was going on. Only the 2nd prince carefully observed the reactions of those lower divine lords. After frowning and pondering for a moment, he came to a realization. He suddenly understood the reason. Turning his head to look at Ji Tianqing, he gave him a deep look. His lips moved soundlessly, and he mouthed 2 words, "Impressive." No one knew when Ji Tianqing had poisoned them. Even those lower divine lords didn't know that they had been poisoned. This kind of invisible poisoning method that took lives indeed made people tremble with fear. The 5th prince was dumbfounded. Seeing the elite experts under his command rapidly decomposing into pools of blood, he was so furious that he almost exploded. At the same time, his heart was filled with fear. The result he didn't want to see the most had finally happened. It's poison. They've been poisoned. The 5th prince finally reacted, his voice hoarse as he roared. He watched as the last lower divine lord also turned into pools of blood amidst a miserable howl, completely dead. The 5th prince suddenly turned around, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at Ji Tianqing. He roared at the top of his lungs, "It's you! It's you, you bastard! You actually poisoned them!" At this moment, it was meaningless for him to say that Ji Tianqing was bloodthirsty, savage, and cruel. Previously, he himself had said that the winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. Everything depended on strength and methods. His skills were inferior. and he had lost dozens of lower divine lords for nothing. It was not an unjust loss. However, he hadn't been able to kill Ji Tianqing and had even suffered such terrible losses. It could be said that he had completely collapsed. The remaining confidants under his command, as well as the experts that the faction had lent him, were practically all dead. Even if he became the crown prince in the future and ascended to the throne as monarch, he would still have to compensate for the huge losses. He would also be blackmailed into signing all sorts of humiliating agreements, betraying the interests of the royal family and the blood-flame divine kingdom. He would definitely become the most humiliated monarch. When he thought of this, his vision turned black and he felt the world spin. But this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Ji Tianqing stared at him, the corners of his mouth curled into a mocking sneer. He nodded and said, "That's right, I poisoned them before the battle began. Not only them, but those heavenly gods who escaped should also be dead by now. Oh right, there's also the four of you. The poison should have taken effect by now." As soon as he finished speaking, the expressions of Song Yan Baizhu, the fifth prince, and the red-robed divine lord changed drastically. The four of them trembled, their eyes filled with deep fear. The fifth prince, in particular, suffered the greatest psychological blow. His blood was already flowing in the opposite direction, and his vision had turned black. When he heard this news, his internal organs immediately churned, and he vomited a mouthful of black blood. Piff-ff. An arrow of blood shot more than 10 feet into the air, drawing an arc in the sky and sprinkling on the red-robed divine lord. "Your Highness! Your Highness!" Song Yan Baizhu and the other two immediately let out anxious and concerned cries. Chapter 30:27. As expected, the fifth prince was poisoned. His entire face had turned black, and his veins were bulging. Black blood was flowing out of his 7 orifices. His internal organs had been corroded into black ashes, and they were mixed with blood as they spurted out of his mouth. He screamed in pain, holding his head with both hands and letting out a muffled roar. Song Yan Baizhu and the red-robed divine emperor were dumbfounded. They could not understand. The fifth prince did not participate in the battle, nor did he consume much of his divine power. Even his cultivation realm was on par with theirs, not much different from theirs. Why did the fifth prince's poison break out before the poison in their bodies did? Could it be that the poison's effect was related to one's rage level? After all, the fifth prince had been humiliated and humiliated repeatedly. He was in a rage. Just as this thought flashed through their minds, the poison in their bodies took effect one after another. The red-robed divine emperor's injuries were even more serious. He could not hold on any longer and spat out black blood. Immediately after, Baizhu's body trembled like a sieve. His internal organs were burning as he fell to the ground, twitching non-stop. Song Yin was the strongest. He lasted a few breaths longer than the other two before black blood gushed out of his mouth and nose. This time, the fifth prince's men were completely wiped out. The battle had already stopped. The second prince and the third prince's men looked at this scene with complicated expressions. They felt a chill run down their spines. Everyone had a deeper understanding of Ji Tianqing's methods. They were even more in awe and fear. However, the second prince and the third prince's expressions were somewhat strange. They saw the fifth prince bleeding from his 7 orifices and howling in pain. Soon he would turn into a pool of blood. The third prince was filled with hesitation and struggle. He thought to himself, no, fifth prince can't die yet. At least he can't die here. Father has already appointed him as the crown prince. If he is poisoned to death by Tianqing, father will definitely be furious. No matter what the reason is, father will definitely kill Tianqing. Even second brother and I will be implicated. We will definitely be severely punished by father. Thinking of this, he wanted to persuade Ji Tianqing to save the poisoned fifth prince. As for the second prince, he was gloating. There was a hint of anticipation in his complicated eyes. "Ha ha, old fifth, oh old fifth, we thought you were scheming enough and would bring us a lot of trouble. I didn't expect that you still weren't Tianqing's match. You were poisoned by him and didn't have long to live. That's great. If you die, you won't be able to become the crown prince. This king has one less competitor. Next, I only need to defeat the third prince and I will be able to seize the throne." Moreover, you were killed by Tianqing. It has nothing to do with this prince. For the sake of Scandinavia's reputation, father would definitely execute Tianqing. As for this prince, at most I will be punished by my father, but my life will not be in danger. This is really killing two birds with one stone. This prince really has to thank Tianqing. The second prince hoped that the fifth prince would be poisoned to death as soon as possible and turn into a pool of blood. Then his wish would be fulfilled, and he wouldn't have to bear the crime. However, things didn't go as planned. The fifth prince howled in pain for a moment. Then, he suddenly took out a large number of divine pills and refined them. Then, he took out the bronze chessboard and a dark green cauldron. He released his divine power and activated these two divine artifacts. Suddenly, the bronze chessboard emitted a 5-colored light that protected his entire body. The dark green cauldron also released an endless amount of green light that entered his body and resisted the corrosion of the poison. These weren't enough. He took out a shining golden talisman and stuck it on the corroded hole in his chest. Suddenly, the mysterious golden talisman emitted an endless amount of golden light and formed a special protective layer in his body that firmly protected his heart and Godhead. Even though his heart was poisoned and had a few holes in it, his organs were still damaged. The rest of his organs had already died and turned into black powder. However, he managed to survive with the two divine artifacts and the talisman. His physical body wasn't destroyed, and his Godhead wasn't corroded by the poison. No matter how miserable his injuries were, at least his divine body and life were preserved. He could try to heal his injuries in the future. The second prince and the third prince's gazes were focused on the fifth prince. When they saw the mysterious golden talisman, they immediately frowned and revealed a look of surprise. Divine Talisman of Heaven Amplification. Isn't that the talisman that Father bestowed upon him during the ceremony 50 years ago? Oh my God, that's a supreme-grade divine talisman, one of the most precious divine talismans of the royal family. With this divine talisman, it's like having an extra life. He was actually forced into such a state. You can imagine how terrifying the poison was. The two princes recognized that the golden divine talisman was bestowed upon the fifth prince by the king. At that time, the fifth prince was in charge of the divine blood ceremony and had put in a lot of effort for it. The ceremony went smoothly, and a few new faces appeared among the top 10 geniuses. This made the king very pleased, and he happily rewarded the fifth prince with a divine talisman of heaven amplification. He didn't expect that the fifth prince, who had kept it for 50 years, would have no choice but to use it today. With the protection of the two divine artifacts and the divine talisman of heaven amplification, the fifth prince's injuries were stabilized. The poison in his body was under control and didn't spread for the time being. His mind was much clearer than before. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open, then growled harshly, "Tianqing, you bastard! You're dead. No one in this world can save you. If I don't tear you to pieces, I swear I won't be a god." After swearing a vicious oath, he glanced at the second prince and the third prince and said hatefully, "You're really ruthless. You actually colluded with that bastard to kill me. I'll remember this. Just you wait." After saying that, the fifth prince turned to leave. The plan had completely failed, and the 400 experts and experts under his command had all been buried here. He had lost miserably, and there was nothing left for him to stay. He could only leave this place as soon as possible and go back to treat his injuries and get rid of the poison. Although Song Yan and Baizhu were still howling in pain, they hadn't turned into blood yet. There was no doubt that they would die. The fifth prince fled alone, and he didn't think of bringing them along. At this time, Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven and blocked the fifth prince's path. He stared at the fifth prince and said in a cold voice, "Don't you think you're too naive to think you can leave here alive? From the moment you kidnapped my daughter, you were bound to die." The fifth prince was shocked and shouted with a ferocious expression, "You bastard! Do you really want to kill me? Are you crazy? Don't you know the consequences of killing me? No matter how capable you are, you can't bear the wrath of the entire blood-flame divine kingdom." He wasn't lying. No divine sovereign could bear the consequences of killing a divine sovereign. The third prince was also very anxious and quickly tried to dissuade him. "Young Master Tianqing, don't be rash. The fifth prince's subordinates are all dead. and he has also suffered such a miserable fate. You should vent your anger. Besides, didn't your daughter come back safe and sound? Why did you kill the fifth prince and become a fugitive? Chapter 30:28. The third prince's words made sense. In his opinion, the fifth prince had already lost so miserably, and Ji Tianqing had won a complete victory, and his daughter Wushuang had been rescued safely. It was a perfect ending. Why did he have to kill the fifth prince himself? In that case, Ji Tianqing would become a deadly enemy of the Bloody Blaze Kingdom. If he didn't want to die, he could only flee to the end of the world. However, the third prince was someone who sought stability, and was even somewhat indecisive. He could never understand Ji Tianqing's state of mind. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said expressionlessly, I said that I came here today not only to save Wushuang, but also to kill the fifth prince and all his lackeys. As for fleeing to the end of the world, the Bloody Blaze Kingdom is not my home. What's the loss of escaping from here? The third prince was suddenly choked. He had a complicated expression, but he didn't know how to persuade him. The second prince had been silent, and his expression didn't change. In fact, he was inclined to kill, and he also hoped that Ji Tianqing would kill the fifth prince. That would be the best result for him. Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven tightly and slashed at the fifth prince with all his strength. The fifth prince's face suddenly turned ashen. While fleeing in a panic, he roared, Second prince, third prince, if you sit and watch this lunatic kill me, my father will never forgive you. He was at the end of his rope, and he had become a commander without an army. If he wanted to live, he could only threaten the second prince and the third prince with morality. But the second prince was expressionless and pretended not to hear anything. The third prince wanted to stop him, but he didn't want to be enemies with Ji Tianqing, so he kept hesitating. Boom! The fifth prince was seriously injured and couldn't avoid the sword of burial of heaven's attack. With a loud explosion, the sword of burial of heaven slashed the ancient bronze chessboard. Instantly, the millstone-sized ancient bronze chessboard was split into two halves by the sword, and was sent flying dozens of miles away. The fifth prince was also sent flying 30 miles and fell into the ruins. Ji Tianqing chased after the fifth prince again with his sword in hand. Once again, he swung his sword and slashed out two dazzling golden sword lights at the fifth prince. The fifth prince was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. At this critical moment, he could only use the bronze furnace to protect himself. Clang! The sword of burial of heaven fiercely slashed at the bronze pill furnace, causing another loud explosion. The cauldron trembled violently and flew for 20 miles before it finally stabilized. The fifth prince was not hit by the sword, but he was shocked to the point of spitting out blood. He looked even more dispirited. As the power of the bronze pill furnace weakened, the poison in his body could no longer be suppressed and began to spread again. Helpless, he hurriedly drew upon the power of the pill furnace to suppress the violent poison in his body. At this moment, Ji Tianqing caught up and slashed out a third time. Shua! A dazzling golden sword radiance, carrying an incomparably violent killing intent, suddenly slashed towards the fifth prince. The fifth prince was so weak that he did not have the strength to dodge. Just as he was about to be beheaded by the sword light, his head separated from his body. He felt that his time of death had come. His expression was one of fear, despair, and helplessness. The second prince's blood was boiling. He secretly clenched his fists, his heart filled with anticipation. The third prince, on the other hand, was nervous. His heart was in his throat, and he could not help but open his mouth to stop it. But at this moment, an angry roar suddenly exploded in the sky. A dazzling blood-red blade of light suddenly descended from the sky. How dare you assassinate the prince? You must be tired of living. As the powerful and mighty voice rang out, the blood-red blade of light that was hundreds of feet long collided with the dazzling golden sword radiance. Bang! In a deafening muffled sound, the sword radiance and the blood-red blade of light collapsed at the same time, exploding into fragments of sword radiance that filled the sky. The violent and devastating shockwave sent the bronze cauldron and the fifth prince flying. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing's sword radiance was blocked, and the fifth prince's life was saved. But unfortunately, The shockwave of the explosion wrapped around the sword Radiant's fragments and minced his body into a bloody mess. In particular, his 2 legs were actually minced into pieces by the sword Radiance, leaving only a pale red divine bone. The 5th prince, who was already severely injured, could no longer bear the pain of losing his legs. His vision turned black and he fainted. The 5th prince and the bronze cauldron fell from the sky and were about to fall into the ruins. At this moment, a purple figure descended from the sky. He struck out a giant blood-red palm and caught the cauldron and the 5th prince, holding them in the palm of his hand. Ji Tianqing and the 2 princes' gazes immediately fell on the purple figure. It was a burly old man in a purple robe. His purple hair danced in the wind. He had a square face. His beard and eyebrows were already white. His eyes were as deep as the sea of stars, and his entire body exuded a domineering aura. When the 2nd prince and the 3rd prince saw the person's appearance clearly, they frowned fiercely and revealed a look of surprise. Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes. His expression became vigilant and alert. "It's you." He recognized that this person was the purple-robed Sir God who ambushed him in the outskirts of Monarch City last night. At that time, he was only 3,000 miles away from Chongyang Courtyard when he was ambushed by 3 Sir Gods. The leader was the purple-robed, bronze-masked Sir God of the 8th Heaven Realm. Although the old man in front of him did not wear a mask and revealed his true face, his divine aura was definitely not weak. However, the aura of his divine power could not be wrong. Ji Tianqing was sure that it was him. The purple-robed old man glanced at him and sneered. "Haha, it's me. What do you want?" After that, the purple-robed old man ignored him. He carried the 5th prince in his arms and silently performed a spell to treat him. At the same time, another cold and majestic voice came from not far away. Where did this arrogant madman come from? How dare he? How dare he openly assassinate the Prince of Monarch Kingdom within the borders of Bloodflame Kingdom? I have traveled to all the kingdoms and have never seen such a ferocious person. Hearing this voice, Ji Tianqing and the 2 princes quickly looked to the south. They saw a handsome young man in a black brocade robe walking in the air. This person was from the Great Yin God clan. He was close to 10 feet tall and had a head of red hair. He looked handsome and refined. He wore a beautiful and exquisite crown on his head. His belt and accessories were incomparably precious. Most importantly, the black brocade robe he wore was embroidered with 8 lifelike golden divine dragons. One look and one could tell that this refined young Sir God clan member had an extremely honorable status. Behind him, there were 4 high divine lords dressed in different attire. 2 of the Sir Gods had ugly and distorted faces. Their auras were also chaotic. It was obvious that they were severely injured. Both of them stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. Intense killing intent emanated from their bodies. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was amiss. He probed with his divine perception and discovered that the 2 Sir Gods had been poisoned. It's them. He instantly understood that the 2 ugly Sir Gods were the unlucky fellows who tried to kill him last night and were poisoned by him. At this moment, he finally understood the black-robed young man's identity. This person was the 5th prince's backer, the mastermind behind this plan. Chapter 30-29. The unconscious 5th prince was saved by an 8th-level divine lord realm purple-robed elder. The black-robed youth had 4 divine lords with him, and his strength was unfathomable. It was impossible for Ji Tianqing to kill the 5th prince now. He frowned and stared coldly at the black-robed youth. "Who are you?" The black-robed youth raised his eyebrows and glanced at him with interest. "You don't even know me? People like you who are ignorant yet arrogant and despotic have no idea what you're doing. I wonder how you managed to survive until today." The 2nd and 3rd princes bowed and cupped their hands at the black-robed youth. "Greetings, Prince Lian." The 2 of them had respectful postures. Even the Divine Lord powerhouses and Imperial guards under them bowed their heads with solemn expressions. This puzzled Ji Tianqing. Prince Lian? A prince of the blood-flame divine kingdom? The king's brother? The uncles of the princes? No. Even if he's the king's elder brother, they wouldn't be so afraid. Prince Lian glanced at the 2 princes and said with a smile that was not a smile, "You two, well done. You actually colluded with outsiders to deal with your own brother. As expected of royalty. The contempt and sarcasm in his words were clear as day. After saying that, he ignored the two princes and hurriedly checked on the fifth prince's injuries. He frowned when he saw that the fifth prince was seriously injured and unconscious with poison surging in his body. What a vicious method! Prince Lien muttered with a grim expression. He took out a jade-green divine pill and catalyzed it with his divine power. Swoosh! The divine pill turned into a dark green stream of air and entered the fifth prince's body. Soon, the power of the pill formed a protective layer that protected the fifth prince's heart and godhead. The fifth prince was finally out of danger and his life was no longer in danger. At the same time, the dark green medicinal power swam in his body and kept devouring the poison. The fifth prince's symptoms eased a little and he slowly woke up. He saw Prince Lien the moment he opened his eyes. He hurriedly propped up his heavily injured body and bowed. Greetings, Prince Lien. I'm sorry that my plan failed and disappointed you. The fifth prince's attitude was very respectful, but there was also a trace of fear and worry. No one knew what he was afraid of and worried about. Prince Lien calmly raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, it's just a small loss. Don't worry about it. Moreover, the other party had three forces working together. You didn't lose unjustly. However, you have to learn from this lesson. There was no perfect conspiracy or plan in this world. One had to make corresponding adjustments and changes according to the situation in order to be invincible. Most importantly, only when one is strong enough can one ignore all schemes and schemes. The fifth prince listened carefully and pretended to be humble. He bowed and said, "Thank you for your advice, Prince Lien. I will remember it." "All right, you should go back and treat your injuries." Prince Lien waved his hand and turned to leave. However, the fifth prince was unwilling to give up. He subconsciously said, "But..." Prince Lien turned to look at him and said expressionlessly, "What? Are you still not satisfied? You want me to kill that brat?" The fifth prince remained silent, tacitly agreeing with this idea. However, he knew that he was being rude and hurriedly apologized. "I was thinking too much. Please forgive me, Prince Lien." Prince Lien said indifferently, "You have to remember that when you have no trump cards but still refuse to give up and fight like a cornered beast, you have already lost." His meaning was clear and everyone present understood. Although Prince Lien was here, he only brought 5 high-level divine lords with him. 2 of the divine lords were heavily injured and poisoned. They did not have much fighting strength. Even if Prince Lien personally attacked, it would be difficult to kill Ji Tianxing. After all, Ji Tianxing had 7 high-level divine lords, 2 imperial army commanders, and more than 40 imperial army soldiers. Prince Lien's side had no chance of winning. If they really fought, the fifth prince would definitely die. 4 of the 5 divine lords would also die. Only that purple-robed elder could cover Prince Lien's escape. Therefore, Prince Lien would definitely not do such a stupid thing. Before leaving, Prince Lien took a deep look at Ji Tianxing. His eyes were deep and cold as he said in a playful tone, "Young man, there will be plenty of time in the future. You must live well. Don't die in the hands of others. I will be very disappointed." In other words, he was determined to take Ji Tianxing's life. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said, "No matter who wants to kill me, they will all die under my sword in the end. There are no exceptions." Hearing this, Grand Prince Lien's pupils constricted, and a cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. The second prince looked at Ji Tianxing with interest and admiration. Only the third prince's expression changed slightly. He was filled with anxiety as he shook his head and sighed. Soon Prince Lien left with the fifth prince and the rest, disappearing into the horizon. The ruins within a radius of 150 miles became silent. The third prince waved his hand and ordered 10 imperial army soldiers to clean up the battlefield and collect the spoils. The second prince brought Yanlong and the rest to Ji Tianxing and bowed before leaving. "Young Master Tianxing, now that the truth is out, I am cleared of suspicion. Fortunately, your daughter was successfully rescued and you are safe and sound. This prince is relieved." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and cupped his hands. "Thank you, second prince, for coming to help. I will remember this favor and will repay it in the future." The second prince smiled with satisfaction and felt that this trip was worthwhile. He nodded and said, "Young Master Tianqing, I admire you for being able to distinguish between kindness and hatred. Let's not talk too much. I have to return to Monarch City to deal with some matters, so I will leave first. By the way, you must be careful in the next few days. Watch out for Prince Lian." With that, he flew into the sky with the 4 monarchs and returned to Monarch City. The third prince stood side by side with Ji Tianqing and watched the second prince leave. He sighed with a bitter smile. "Sigh, young Master Tianqing, you already have a death feud with Little Five. Why do you have to provoke Prince Lian? I understand that you don't want to lose your momentum and limelight. That's why you said those words to Prince Lian. However, those words are meaningless. In the end, you still have to submit to him." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "What's wrong? Is Prince Lian very powerful? So powerful that you're afraid of him?" These words hurt the third prince's pride. However, the third prince was not angry. He nodded without hesitation and said, "That's right. His power and status are on a completely different level from ours. Even father wouldn't dare to offend him, let alone second brother and I. He's the top nobles, the true prodigy." "Since you said so, I understand." Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled mockingly. "That Prince Lian should be a member of the Great Yan Empire's imperial family, right? He might even be a cousin of the current Great Yan Emperor." Chapter 30. That's right. The third prince nodded and said solemnly, "The old emperor of the Great Yan Empire passed away 10 years ago. The cause of his death is unknown. He had 8 princes and 12 princesses. The old emperor was in his prime and had been at the peak of the Divine Lord realm for many years. He had been looking for an opportunity to break through to the Divine King realm. However, he didn't appoint a crown prince and suddenly passed away outside the empire. Even his corpse has not been found. This caused the Great Yan Empire to fall into chaos for half a year after his death. During this period, the princes fought for power and wealth to inherit the throne. Among them, the 2 most powerful princes were the eldest prince and the 4th prince. The eldest prince was the eldest son, and his mother was the empress. It was only logical that he should inherit the throne. Moreover, the imperial family members and elders supported him. However, the 4th prince argued that the eldest prince had something to do with the death of the old emperor, and that the eldest prince had ulterior motives. He swore to seize the throne and investigate the cause of the old emperor's death to give the people an explanation. The 4th prince was very powerful and had won the support of the other princes, princesses, and officials. Moreover, he had recruited many top forces and was very powerful. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "Then the 4th prince failed? He's Grand Prince Lian?" "No." The 3rd prince shook his head and explained, "The 4th prince did fail, but he was killed by the eldest prince's heaven-shaking divine sword outside the palace. Too many things happened during the fight between the 2 princes. Too many forces were involved and the process was very complicated. It can't be explained in a few words. But in the end, the first prince won and rightfully inherited the throne, becoming the new emperor. The 4th prince was killed, and the 3 princes and 5 princesses who supported him, as well as a large number of court officials, were captured. Those people were either severely punished, imprisoned in the imperial city, or exiled to various divine kingdoms." Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, "So Grand Prince Lian was one of the 3 princes who supported the 4th prince?" "No." The 3rd prince shook his head again. "You." Ji Tianqing frowned and said unhappily, "Can you stop keeping me in suspense and tell me everything at once?" The 3rd prince was a little embarrassed, so he explained straightforwardly, "Prince Lian is the 8th prince. He didn't participate in the fight for the throne. Before that incident, he had always been obsessed with the cultivation of the divine Tao, and was determined to break through to the divine king realm. He wasn't interested in politics, power, or the throne, and he was only immersed in cultivation, and pursued the peak of the divine Tao that was eternal and indestructible. Among the 8 princes, he was the most talented and the most favored by the old emperor. Many people even speculated that if he helped the 4th prince fight for the throne, he would most likely succeed." Ji Tianqing was even more confused and asked, since Grand Prince Lian is a martial maniac and didn't participate in the struggle for the throne. Why was he exiled to Bloodflame Divine Country? The third prince was silent for a moment before replying. Because he and the fourth prince are of the same mother. Even though he didn't participate in the fight for the throne, the fourth prince and their mother almost killed the first prince and took the throne. After the first prince fought for the throne, he killed the fourth prince and their mother. He also executed the entire fourth prince residence, killing more than 3,000 people. So that's how it is. Only then did Ji Tianqing come to a realization. No wonder Prince Lian didn't do anything and was punished. The third prince continued. After the first prince ascended the throne, Prince Lian acted very indifferent, as if he didn't care about the death of his brother and mother. Moreover, he was still immersed in cultivation and didn't show any signs of rebellion. Because of this incident, countless people in the imperial capital talked behind his back, saying that Prince Lian was an emotionless, cold-blooded animal. They really felt sorry for the fourth prince and his mother. But Prince Lian didn't move as usual. Ji Tianqing continued. But the more he acted like this, the more the first prince feared him. The first prince was also worried that if Prince Lian broke through to the Divine King realm, his death would come. That's right. The third prince nodded in agreement and said, therefore, after the first prince ascended the throne, he punished those traitors and Prince Lian. He gave the eighth prince the title of Prince Lian and rewarded him with tens of billions of resources to comfort him. He sent him to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom as the overseer. The eighth prince's residence was kept, but all the servants, guards, and hangers-on were dismissed. When Prince Lian came to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, he only brought 2 servants, one old and one young, with him. It was miserable. Ji Tianqing said calmly, the first prince did this to keep Prince Lian away from the Great Yan Empire, away from the center of power, so that he wouldn't have a chance to stir up trouble. Moreover, he removed his subordinates and made him an idle prince in the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. In this way, Prince Lian wouldn't be a threat to the first prince's throne. However, Prince Lian wasn't the kind of person who would take it lying down. I guess Prince Lian has been recruiting and scheming in the dark ever since he came to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. He probably wants to kill his way back to the Great Yan Empire to avenge his mother and brother. The third prince frowned and thought for a while. He nodded and said, maybe. However, this kind of thing is better left unsaid. Who would dare to discuss it openly? After Prince Lian came to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, he built his residence into an impregnable fortress in just 3 years. Not only did he recruit thousands of guards, but he also recruited 300 diners and people with special abilities. Moreover, the fourth prince's old subordinates, including those top martial arts forces, have quietly joined him. Now he has formed an alliance with the fifth prince. I guess he has some ulterior motives. I don't know what method he used to make father make the fifth prince the crown prince. This matter definitely has something to do with Prince Lian. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, you just said that the fourth prince's old subordinates and those martial arts forces have all joined Prince Lian's faction? Does the Heavenly Union sect include those powerful martial arts forces? The third prince nodded and said, yes. The Heavenly Union sect is one of the top 10 sects in the Great Yan Empire. However, after the Inheritance War 10 years ago, the Heavenly Union sect sacrificed a lot to help the fourth prince. Now the Heavenly Union sect is much weaker than before. However, the Heavenly Union sect isn't the only sect that has joined Prince Lian. Based on our observations over the past 10 years, I'm afraid there's another top sect and several second-rate sections. In short, Prince Lian doesn't want to reveal himself because he doesn't want to attract the Great Yan Emperor's attention. However, he's been accumulating forces in secret and has long grown to a shocking extent. Now that he's interfering with father's crown prince selection, it must be part of his plan. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and muttered to himself, a 9th-level divine lord, the prince with the most talent and potential. Moreover, he's gathered a large number of experts and recruited 2 top sections. He's a formidable opponent. Chapter 30-31. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, the third prince smiled bitterly. Young Master Tianqing, I've told you so much. Do you still not understand? Prince Lian's identity, status, and influence far surpass ours. We're no match for him. Why should we throw an egg at a rock and seek our own destruction? Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said indifferently, even if we don't want to be enemies with him, we've already formed a deep grudge. Will he let us go? Of course, the person he wants to kill is me. You don't have to worry. At least, you're the third prince of Bloodflame Divine Kingdom. As long as you don't form a death grudge with him, he won't make things difficult for you. The third prince was stunned. He said awkwardly, although that's true, we're allies. Since we're helping each other, how can I let you fight alone? How can I watch you fight to the death with Prince Lian? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said indifferently, Third prince, you have too many ties and concerns. You'll never be able to settle grudges as quickly as I can. So, I appreciate your kindness, but you don't have to worry about this matter. But you... The third prince saw that he was stubborn and wanted to persuade him. But Ji Tianqing waved his hand and interrupted him. Coincidentally, the 10 imperial guards had also finished cleaning up the battlefield and brought back a large pile of spoils. There were over 100 divine weapons and equipment. There were swords, spears, halberds, armor, pill furnaces, and so on. There were also many interspatial rings that contained large amounts of godstones and resources. Occasionally there were some rare treasures. In addition, there were over 600 pieces of godhead fragments scattered around the ruins. Ji Tianqing didn't want any of those divine weapons and cultivation resources. He only took the 600 pieces of godhead fragments. To the third prince, those godhead fragments weren't of much use. Divine weapons and equipment, as well as spatial rings filled with cultivation resources, were more practical. So the two of them split the spoils and left the battlefield. They returned to Royal City. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing, the third prince, and the others returned to Royal City. It was already afternoon. Royal City was very lively. Countless citizens and divine race members flooded the streets and rushed to the square in the center of the city. Because the divine blood ceremony would be held tomorrow, the commoners and the Protoss had all rushed over in advance to take up space. The square in the center of the city had a radius of 30 miles. Even if the sky and the ground were filled with people, it could only accommodate 1 million people at most. However, there were millions of people in the royal city. In addition to the Protoss who had rushed over from all over the country, there were millions more. If you went to the square to watch the battle tomorrow, there would definitely be no seats available. He barely managed to find a place to stay, but it was also at the edge of the square. If they were too far away, they wouldn't be able to enjoy the exciting battle. Moreover, at the end of the divine blood ceremony, the royal family would pluck a branch from the blood-flame sacred tree. The tree branches would turn into a rain of blood that would cover the sky and cover the sun, scattering all over the square. The closer one was, the more blood-fire divine chi they would be able to absorb. It would be of great help in modifying one's bloodline and improving one's talent and comprehension. After understanding this point, Ji Tianqing no longer found it strange. The third prince sent him back to Changfeng courtyard and returned to the palace. When Ji Tianqing returned to the Changfeng courtyard, the house that was destroyed last night had already been repaired by the craftsman. Although that incident had happened last night, the main culprit, the fifth prince, had already received a terrible punishment. Not only had he been heavily injured, both his legs had been crushed to pieces, and his body had been poisoned. For the time being, the fifth prince could only go into seclusion to heal his wounds and would not be able to come out to harm others. As for the second prince, he had made it clear that he wanted to cooperate with the third prince and would not harm Ji Tianqing. Thus, the Changfeng courtyard was very safe. After returning to his residence, Ji Tianqing entered the secret room alone and did not allow anyone to disturb him. He took out the Jiuqian 10 Absolutes tower and placed it on the stone table in front of him. Then he entered the 5th floor of the divine tower to visit his daughter, Wushuang. Whoosh! With a flash of divine light, he appeared in the origin divine formation. He looked around but did not see Wushuang's figure. When I rescued Wushuang, she was clearly on the altar. How come she's gone? Ji Tianqing was puzzled. Wushuang was still bound by the fifth prince's divine rope and could not use her divine power. Logically speaking, she could not have untied the divine rope and left the origin divine formation. Thus, Ji Tianqing entered the 6th floor of the distorted spacetime. After flying for a while in the distorted spacetime, he found Wu Shuang. Wu Shuang was sitting on the frigid ice jade bed with his eyes closed. The divine rope on her body had been broken into several pieces and was thrown to the side. Ji Ku was beside her, observing her situation. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing guessed the reason and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. "Big brother Tianqing, you're finally here." Ji Ku saw him and hurriedly greeted him. Ji Tianqing came to the bed and looked at Wu Shuang. Seeing that she was fine, he asked, "Kuku, did you save Wu Shuang?" Ji Ku nodded and said, "Yes, I sensed through the divine tower that Wu Shuang was in the origin divine formation and was sealed by a divine weapon. I rushed to the altar to save Wu Shuang. Wu Shuang told me that she was kidnapped by the second prince. The second prince used her as a hostage and set up an ambush to force you to die. I guess that since you dared to go, you must have made preparations and plans, so there shouldn't be a problem. Thus, I helped Wu Shuang untie the divine rope without discussing with you so as not to disturb you." Ji Tianqing was surprised and asked, "The divine rope tied to Wu Shuang is a high-grade monarch-grade divine weapon. Even if I wanted to untie it, it would take a lot of effort. How did you untie the divine rope and cut it apart?" Ji Ku pointed above and smiled. "Of course, I borrowed the power of the divine tower." Ji Tianqing came to a realization and did not ask anymore. Most of the time, he was the one using the divine tower and it seemed to be his divine weapon. But in reality, Ji Ku was the true master of this divine tower. After all, she had inherited the divine Tao inheritance of the divine bird phoenix and cultivated the 9 revolution undying art. This 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower had also become one with her and was connected by blood. Ji Tianqing, Wu Shuang, and the others still needed to cultivate the divine power of the phoenix's nest before they could return to the divine tower from afar. Ji Ku, on the other hand, did not need to. He could enter and leave at will with just a thought. At this moment, Ji Ku asked again, "Big brother Tianqing, is the crisis over? You successfully escaped from the encirclement?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Yes, I asked the 3rd prince and the imperial guards to set up an ambush on the 3rd level of the divine tower. Later, the 2nd prince also brought people to help. We worked together to kill the 5th prince's lackeys. The 5th prince was also severely injured by me and was poisoned. Unfortunately, when I was about to kill him, Grand Prince Lian came to save him." Ji Ku looked regretful and asked who Grand Prince Lian was. Ji Tianqing could only give her a brief introduction of Grand Prince Lian's background. After listening, Ji Ku said worriedly, "The strong enemy of the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom has not been dealt with yet, and now Grand Prince Lian of the Great Yan Empire is involved. You have to be more careful in the future." Chapter 30-32. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and advised Ji Ku not to worry too much. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. There would always be a way. Ji Ku did not say anything else and said with a smile, "Big brother Tianqing, I have good news for you." Ji Tianqing revealed an expectant expression. "What good news?" Ji Ku smiled and said, "Previously, you helped us solve our cultivation bottlenecks. My and eldest senior sister's cultivation has been much smoother. Now she's breaking through to the Divine Lord realm and will succeed soon. My strength is also progressing smoothly, and I'll be able to break through soon." If Wu Shuang's appearance had not interrupted her closed-door cultivation, she would have been able to break through even faster. Ji Tianqing said with relief, "That's great. When you break through to the Divine Lord realm, you can follow me and we can move together." Ji Ku quickly nodded, his eyes revealing a look of anticipation. At this moment, Ji Wu Shuang finished adjusting her breathing and opened her eyes. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had returned safe and sound, a look of joy appeared on her face. "Father, you finally returned safely. That's great. The 2nd prince, that treacherous fellow, actually ambushed so many experts. I've been worried about you." Ji Tianqing took her little hand and patted her head, comforting her. "Don't worry, isn't father fine? Also, when has father ever done something that he's not confident in?" Ji Wu Shuang heaved a sigh of relief and her hanging heart settled back into her stomach. After calming down, her eyes were a little dim. She lowered her head and said with a voice full of self-blame, "Father, this is all my fault. Wu Shuang knows her mistake. If I hadn't left the divine pagoda to see what the divine realm was like, this storm wouldn't have happened and you wouldn't have been in danger. I don't want to see the divine realm anymore. The divine spirits here are no different from the people in the mortal world. They're all selfish, treacherous, and despicable. I'm too weak and can't protect myself. I'll only cause trouble for Father. Therefore, I want to stay in the divine pagoda and work hard to cultivate and become stronger. In the past, Ji Wushuang had never seen the divine realm before, and her heart was filled with longing and anticipation. The heavenly realm sounded very grand and lofty. It should be one of those illusory, immortal, and otherworldly paradises, right? However, after seeing it with her own eyes, she realized that this place was no different from the mortal world. It was just that the world was bigger, and the people and gods were stronger. It was still full of intrigue, deceit, and murder. With her strength, not only would she not be able to help Ji Tianqing, she would also become a burden. She was disheartened and only wanted to cultivate and become stronger. Ji Tianqing smiled gently as he held her small hand and comforted her. Shuang'er, you don't have to blame yourself. This isn't your fault at all. He could only blame those people for being too sinister and despicable. However, you can't treat all gods as villains. Among the gods you've met before, there are some good people. Ji Wushuang hurriedly nodded in agreement and said, and that's right. At least that sister from Zhenhong was very kind. She almost lost her life trying to protect me. Father, I still have to go out and visit my sister in Zhenhong with you. I want to thank her in person and think of a way to help her heal. After settling her down, I'll return to the divine pagoda to heal. Is that okay? Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. Of course. She was injured trying to protect you, so you have to thank her in person. As for healing her, Father has already made preparations. You don't have to worry. Preparations? Ji Wushuang revealed a puzzled expression and asked Father, did you already guess that she would be seriously injured? That's not it. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but smile and said, Father has already seen that she is very special. She is a pearl covered in dust. Previously, I wanted to find an opportunity to give her some advice. Now that she is seriously injured, I will take this opportunity to give her an opportunity that will definitely benefit her immensely. Really? That's great. Ji Wushuang found it hard to believe and said happily, this is also good. You can help her and return the favor. Only then can I feel at ease. You rest for a while first. Father still has some things to take care of. Ji Tianqing pinched her little face and said with a smile, when Father is done, I will bring you to visit her. Okay. Ji Wushuang hurriedly nodded in agreement and continued to revolve and cultivate. Following that, Ji Ku went into seclusion to cultivate and assault the Divine Lord realm. Ji Tianqing also took out a large pile of divine spark fragments and started devouring and refining them. The divine spark fragments that the Imperial Guards found in the ruins of West Wind Town were basically all Divine Lord powerhouses. After all, close to 100 low-level Divine Lords and quite a few high-level Divine Lords were all killed on the spot. Even a dozen low-level Divine Lord-level Imperial Guards were also killed. Those divine spark fragments were scattered in the ruins and mixed together. It was very difficult to distinguish clearly. When the Imperial Guards cleaned up the battlefield, they only found over 600 fragments, which was already considered very little. Although these fragments were all low-level Divine Lord level, there were enough of them. However, there were enough of them so Ji Tianqing didn't mind. He cast the devouring divine ability and swiftly devoured those divine spark fragments, absorbing the power inside and stripping away the divine Tao laws inside. Inside each divine spark fragment contained 3 to 5 kinds of divine Tao laws. Ji Tianqing screened them continuously, eliminating the laws that he already grasped, and also eliminating those low-level and useless laws. This way, the divine Tao laws that were suitable for him to refine were few and far between. Time passed by quietly. Unknowingly, 12 days passed in the distorted space-time. Ji Tianqing had devoured all 600 pieces of the quintessence fragments. Half of the power went to the heaven-mending pearl, and the other half of the divine power went to him. This caused his power to skyrocket, reaching the peak of the 3rd degree realm, just a step away from being able to break through to the 4th degree realm and become a middle-level Divine Lord. In addition, he even stripped away 25 kinds of divine Tao laws from those divine spark fragments. Adding in his original 190 laws, the number of laws that he grasped reached as many as 215. This was a very terrifying number. Surveying the entire Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, no, it should be within the entire Great Yin Empire, there probably wasn't a second person who possessed so many divine Tao laws. Even the Great Yin Empire's old emperor, that peak divine lord powerhouse, also couldn't possibly grasp so many laws. Only divine king realm powerhouses could achieve it. At the same time that Ji Tianqing's strength skyrocketed, the divine power that he expended previously was replenished. Some of his injuries also naturally healed. He reached an even more powerful peak state and ended his cultivation. Waking up Ji Wushuang, who was still cultivating, the father and daughter pair left the divine tower and returned to the secret chamber. Although he was in close seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 12 days, but only 6 hours had passed in the outside world. It was the dead of the night. Ji Tianqing brought Ji Wushuang out of the secret chamber and rushed to Zhen Hong's residence. Previously, Zhen Hong was seriously injured and unconscious. Ji Tianqing used the life-saving divine light and healed 80% of her injuries. She was already fine now. It was just that there were still many hidden injuries that needed to recuperate for a period of time before she could recover. In the morning, she entered the secret chamber to recuperate. But she sat there for the majority of the day and was ultimately unable to calm her heart to recuperate. Her heart was uneasy and kept thinking about Ji Tianqing and Wushuang's safety. Feng Yun Reading Network. Chapter 30-33. Zhen Hong had been in the secret chamber the whole time and had not come out. Therefore, she did not know the result. When the maid outside the secret chamber reported that Ji Tianqing and Wushuang had come to visit her, she was stunned on the spot. After coming back to her senses, she let out a long sigh of relief and smiled happily. When Ji Tianqing and Wushuang entered the secret chamber, she quickly got up to greet them. She looked at Wushuang up and down several times. When she saw that she was safe and sound, she said with red eyes, "Miss Wushuang, it's great that you're okay. I've been worried all day. Fortunately, you've returned safely." Ji Tianqing could see that Zhen Hong's injury was not improving, so he guessed that she was not lying. Ji Wushuang bowed to her and thanked her sincerely. Zhen Hong quickly supported her and said with some fear, "Young mistress, please get up. Zhen Hong can't accept such a big gift. Moreover, Zhen Hong failed to protect you. It's already a great kindness for young Master Tianqing to not blame me." Both sides exchanged a few words. After Wushuang thanked him in person, Ji Tianqing asked her to return to the divine tower and go into seclusion to distort the space-time. The secret chamber quieted down. Only Ji Tianqing and Zhen Hong were left. At this time, Ji Tianqing began to talk about business. "Miss Zhen Hong, your injury has not healed. This time, not only Wushuang wants to thank you in person, but I also want to help you heal." Zhen Hong was stunned for a moment and was quite moved. She quickly waved her hand and said, "Young Master Tianqing, I don't dare to trouble you anymore. Previously, you used that holy divine light to heal 80% of my injury. You really don't have to trouble yourself anymore." She was moved and lowered her head shyly, not daring to look at Ji Tianqing's face. For some reason, when she was alone with Ji Tianqing in the secret chamber, her heart would beat faster. Ji Tianqing said seriously, "Actually, it's not just about treating your injuries. It's also about your background." "Family background?" Zhen Hong was stunned for a moment. He raised his head in confusion and stared at Ji Tianqing. "Young Master Tianqing, what do you mean?" Ji Tianqing didn't answer. He asked, "Do you remember what happened when you were young? Where did you grow up? What do your parents look like?" Zhen Hong was a little surprised and asked awkwardly, "Mr. Tianqing, why did you suddenly ask this? Did His Majesty tell you?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, "No, it has nothing to do with the third prince. I never asked her about you." Only then did Zhen Hong feel relieved. After seriously recalling for a moment, he said, "Before I was 12 years old, I had been living at the border of a neighboring country. It was a small village in the middle of the mountains. The village was surrounded by mountains on all sides and was very remote. There were only about 200 people in the village, and everyone was very harmonious and close. For as long as I could remember, I had never seen my mother. It was always my father who brought me up. When my father was young, he was seriously injured and couldn't cultivate anymore. His body was very weak. He couldn't go to the jungle to hunt spirit beasts and divine beasts like other people. He also couldn't go to the workshop to work. It was almost impossible for him to live alone. Fortunately, the neighbors helped me and my father to live peacefully for so many years. Many times I asked my father where my mother was. My father always lowered his head silently, as if he didn't want to talk about the past. I asked many times, but he only replied that my mother was very far away and couldn't be with us. When I was 12 years old, a group of strange and vicious people broke into our village. They were extremely vicious and evil. They killed all the people in the village and set the whole village on fire. My father was caught by them and was tortured. They forced my father to tell them some secrets. But my father didn't say anything and was tortured to death. Later they caught me again and prepared to take me away. It was at that time that Master appeared. He had just returned from a neighboring country with a large number of guards and soldiers. He saved me on the way. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "In that case, your father is an ordinary protoss. The problem lies with your mother." Zhen Hong frowned and asked, "Young Master Tianqing, what happened to my mother? What's the problem?" Ji Tianqing stared at her and said solemnly, "Your mother is not an ordinary protoss. She has a noble bloodline." Ah! Zhen Hong was shocked and in disbelief. "How is that possible? My father has never mentioned it to me." Ji Tianqing continued, "According to my speculation, your mother should be a dragon god." Dragon god? Zhen Hong's expression was even more stunned. She was a little dizzy from the shock of this sudden news. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right. She is the descendant of a divine dragon and a protoss. The bloodline of the dragon gods is noble and powerful. They have the powerful physique and bloodline of the dragons and the cultivation talent and potential of the protoss. Every dragon god has an 80% chance of becoming a divine lord. For every 100 dragon gods, there's a possibility of one divine king realm powerhouse appearing." Zhen Hong was completely shocked and exclaimed in disbelief, How is this possible? There is such a powerful race in the world?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing nodded affirmatively and said, "After all, the bloodline of the dragon gods is a combination of the characteristics of the dragons and the protoss. It should be quasi-king level. In this world, the dragon gods should be ranked in the top 100 bloodlines. In order to maintain the purity and strength of their bloodline, the dragon gods have formulated an ancient rule that the dragon gods can only mate with other dragon gods. Once they mate with other races, not only will the dragon gods' bloodline weaken, but they will also be severely punished by the dragon gods. Including the partner of the union and the children born, they will all be executed. Because the dragon gods think that it is blasphemy against them." Zhen Hong was stunned for a long time before she murmured in a low voice, "No wonder father was so infatuated and in love with mother, but never resented her for abandoning us and leaving. An ordinary protoss and a noble dragon god. There must have been an unforgettable relationship between the two of them. But due to the ancestral teachings of the dragon gods and to protect father and me, mother had to leave, right?" Zhen Hong had a complicated look in her eyes as she murmured sadly. Her eyes were full of tears. After a long while, she collected her thoughts and bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing. "Young Master Tianqing, thank you for clearing my doubts and letting me understand my background." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Your dragon god bloodline has been diluted. You are not as monstrous and powerful as the pure-blooded dragon gods. Therefore, the dragon god bloodline does not have much impact on your appearance and body shape. But this also causes your body shape to be very different from that of ordinary protoss women. At the same time, your talent and aptitude are also a bit stronger than ordinary protoss." "I see." Zhen Hong came to a realization and said with a wry smile, "I used to think that I was an anomaly among the protoss, a freak. Because of this, I felt very inferior." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "No need to feel inferior. Your dragon god bloodline has not awakened yet. When I help you awaken your bloodline and evolve into the appearance of the dragon gods, The ones who should feel inferior are those Protoss women. Chapter 30-34. Awaken my bloodline? Zhen Hong's eyes widened as she looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. Young master, can you help me awaken my dragon god bloodline? Of course. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. This is not difficult for me. He did not say the rest of his words. After all, he had a real divine dragon by his side. There was also a half-dragon half-god guy. This sudden huge surprise made Zhen Hong a little flustered, and her pretty face blushed a little. Young master, how can you help me awaken my bloodline? Ji Tianqing pointed to the purple jade bed in the corner of the secret room. Suddenly, Zhen Hong's pretty face became even hotter, and she lowered her head shyly. Even the base of her neck was red. She hesitated for a moment before she got up, walked to the purple jade bed, and slowly lay down. Ji Tianqing frowned, and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you lying down? Meditate and activate your bloodline. Huh. Zhen Hong realized that she had misunderstood and was immediately embarrassed. She hurriedly got up and sat cross-legged on the jade bed, closed her eyes and began to activate her divine power. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and used his divine sense to communicate with the black dragon. Little black, lend me a drop of dragon blood. The black dragon was cultivating in seclusion when it suddenly heard this sentence, and its body trembled. Oji, what do you want to do? It instinctively had a premonition that something bad was going to happen. Ji Tianqing explained, don't be nervous. I only need a drop of dragon blood as a primer to activate Zhen Hong's dragon god bloodline. You really only need a drop of blood? The black dragon relaxed and hurriedly activated its cultivation to force out a drop of dragon blood. Whoosh! A drop of pure black dragon blood the size of an egg flew out of the divine pagoda and landed in Ji Tianqing's palm. This drop of dragon blood was crystal clear like a black gemstone. It shone with 7-colored divine light and emitted a powerful dragon aura. Ji Tianqing glanced at Zhen Hong and saw that she was still channeling her energy. Her bloodline had not been fully stimulated. Therefore, he sent out a burst of divine power from his left hand into Zhen Hong's body to help her activate her bloodline power. Not long after, the blood in her body began to boil like a great river. Zhen Hong's face also turned red. His skin swelled and his veins bulged. He looked even more majestic. Furthermore, the state of her blood boiling caused her to sweat all over and her body to tremble uncontrollably. For a girl, this state was not beautiful. However, she couldn't care less. She could only calm herself down and focus on maintaining the circulation of her bloodline. Zhen Hong, I'll use a drop of dragon blood to completely awaken your dragon god bloodline. The process will be a little painful, but you must hold on. As long as you can get through this, you'll be reborn. Although this sounded quite dangerous, Zhen Hong chose to believe him and nodded in agreement. Understood. Ji Tianqing no longer hesitated. He pointed at her forehead with his right hand and shot out the black dragon blood. Swoosh! The egg-sized drop of black dragon blood turned into a pitch-black stream of water and drilled into her forehead. It swam in her mind, then spread to her limbs and bones, and quickly merged into her bloodline. Suddenly, her boiling and surging bloodline became even more violent as if it had encountered a shocking hurricane. Rumble! The speed of her blood surging immediately increased by 5 times, making a low sound like muffled thunder. Not only did it speed up, but the power of her bloodline also increased by several times. As it rushed through her meridians and blood vessels, it even stirred up layers of huge waves and vortexes. Such violent power caused Zhen Hong's body to swell as if it was filled with air. Bang! 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 With a series of muffled explosions, her body continued to grow taller and wider. Her skin also cracked and blood flowed out. Her meridians were widened, and her bones grew rapidly, becoming wider and stronger. In just 100 breaths, she had grown 6 feet taller and 50% larger. The dragon god bloodline hidden deep in her bloodline was completely activated. Her appearance also underwent a huge change. She no longer looked like an ordinary god. She had indeed become a dragon god. She was 4.5 meters tall, slender and vigorous, and filled with explosive power. The cracked skin all over her body was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Golden dragon scales gradually grew out from the areas where the blood was dripping. Her tailbone was also elongated, breaking through the constraints of her skin, and a dark golden dragon tail emerged. And the top of her head, a bone also broke out and quickly turned into a dragon horn. Although that pale golden bone was only the embryonic form of a dragon horn. But in the future, as her strength continued to increase, that dragon horn would also grow. At this moment, Zhenhong was indeed as Ji Tianqing had said. She had broken through the cocoon and become a butterfly, bathed in blood and reborn. However, the pain she suffered was also unimaginable to ordinary people. Her blood boiled, her meridians and flesh were torn, her bones expanded and grew, her appearance changed and reformed. This kind of pain was equivalent to piecing her back together after being torn apart. She trembled in pain, her face was distorted, and her body was covered in blood and cold sweat. Although her will was strong, she clenched her teeth and did not let out a scream. But from time to time, one or two painful muffled groans overflowed from her mouth and nose. Ji Tianqing was most worried that she would not be able to bear the pain during the awakening process and fall into a coma. That would be the failure of the awakening, and it would cause irreversible damage to her. Fortunately, she was strong enough and had a strong will. She actually survived. After a full hour, her bloodline calmed down. The sudden changes in her appearance gradually stabilized. The pain like death by 1,000 cuts was also rapidly alleviating. The awakening was successful. Phew! Zhenhong let out a long sigh of relief, spat out a mouthful of blood, collapsed and panted violently. It was as if the near-death experience had almost exhausted her mental and physical strength. So much so that she did not notice that the clothes on her body had been torn apart and turned into a pile of rags. Most of the rags were stained with blood and scattered on the ground. It could not cover her incomparably slender, vigorous and perfect body after her evolution. Ji Tianqing witnessed the whole process, but he did not have a trace of distracting thoughts. He had been observing Zhenhong's situation. Seeing that her state was stable after the successful awakening, he warned, "You have successfully awakened the Dragon God bloodline and become a Dragon God warrior. But it is not over yet. The 5 hours after the awakening is the best time for you to lay the foundation of the divine Tao. Put on your clothes first, I will let the white dragon help you." After that, he took out a set of scarlet armor from the space ring and handed it to Zhenhong. This was a set of mid-grade monarch-level artifact, which could be enlarged or shrunk at will. It was as light as nothing when worn. Zhenhong did not care about her shyness. She used her power to clean up the blood and rags on her body, and quickly put on the scarlet armor. The slender and healthy body of the dragon goddess was immediately covered by the armor. But even so, it was difficult to hide her explosive curves and proud posture. She looked down at herself and whispered, "Young master really did not lie to me. This is the true form of the dragon god clan. Such a perfect body is enough to make all the women of the god clan envious and jealous." Chapter 30-35. Sigh. Women. Ji Tianqing heaved a silent sigh. After all, Zhenhong's focus was a little strange. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything and contacted Bai Long in the Divine Tower with his divine sense. "Bai Long, it's time to work." Bai Long was also cultivating in the distorted space-time, and he was completely focused. Suddenly, he heard Ji Tianqing's voice transmission, and he was immediately awakened. He quickly ended his cultivation and asked expectantly, "Master, is there a big battle again? Who are you going to kill this time?" Ji Tianqing said in a playful tone, "With your current strength, I won't call you even if there is a big battle." "Huh." Bai Long was a little embarrassed and asked with a smile, "Then what can I do for you, master?" Ji Tianqing said with a smile, "Do you still remember what I said to you before?" Bai Long thought for a moment and his expression suddenly changed. He asked with a wry smile, "You mean, extreme joy begets sorrow, and it'll be fine if you don't cry when the time comes?" "That's right." Ji Tianqing's smile became even more mocking. "Ahem." Bai Long's expression changed and he said fawningly, "Master, I'm so obedient, sensible, filial and adorable. Cut the crap and come out." Ji Tianqing interrupted him simply and rudely. Bai Long left the divine tower and appeared in the secret chamber. Just as he was about to beg Ji Tianqing for mercy, he suddenly saw Zhen Hong sitting on the jade bed in a crimson armor. He was stunned and a stunned expression appeared on his face. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow! Isn't this a female warrior of the dragon gods? Oh my god! Such an explosive and powerful figure. It's one in a million." Bai Long's eyes lit up and he asked subconsciously, "Master, where did you get such a superb dragon girl?" Ahem. Ji Tianqing pretended to cough twice and frowned as he glared at Bai Long. Zhen Hong also frowned as she stared at Bai Long. Her eyes were filled with shame and anger. Ha! Bai Long regained his senses and scratched his head awkwardly. He quickly explained, "Miss, don't be angry. I didn't mean to offend you. I was really praising you for your beauty when I was babbling nonsense just now." As he spoke, he sized up Zhen Hong from head to toe, unable to hide his amazement. "Miss, why do you look so familiar? I remember now. You are from Zhen Hong." Only then did White Dragon recognize that the awesome dragoness in front of him was Divine Lord Zhen Hong. He glanced at Zhen Hong, then looked at Ji Tianqing. A playful smile appeared on his face, as if he understood what was going on. Master and Miss Zhen Hong are together alone in the secret room again. Just as his mind was filled with fanciful thoughts, Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Bai Long, Miss Zhen Hong has just awakened her dragon god bloodline and has yet to establish the foundation of the divine path. I'll leave this matter to you." Bai Long first used his secret techniques to comb her meridians, divine power and divine soul. After her condition stabilized, he taught her the Dragon Clan's secret techniques. This process was very complicated. There couldn't be the slightest mistake. It was like building a palace with bricks. Once there was a problem with the foundation, it was likely to cause the entire palace to tilt, crack and collapse. At the same time, he had to speed up and complete it within 10 hours. This made him have to go all out and consume divine power and soul power regardless of the cost. After all, he hadn't reached the Divine Lord realm yet, but Zhen Hong was a third-stage lower Divine Lord. This was also a great challenge for him. Time passed quietly. 6 hours passed quickly. Bai Long completed the first 2 steps and taught Zhen Hong 18 Dragon Clan secret techniques. Next, he had to guide Zhen Hong to master the 18 Dragon Clan secret techniques and condense them into the foundation of the divine path. Fortunately, Zhen Hong completely obeyed Ji Tianqing's instructions and cooperated with Bai Long to cast the secret techniques. Furthermore, her talent and comprehension ability were greatly improved, understanding with a little hint. In addition, there was still Ji Tianqing supervising the entire process, guiding by the side all along. That made the process very smooth. Unknowingly, another 4 hours passed. The 10-hour deadline was already up. After this, Zhen Hong's dragon god bloodline returned to silence. Wanting to establish a foundation and imprint the Dragon Clan's secret techniques again would be doubly difficult. Fortunately, Bai Long successfully completed the mission. Zhen Hong's divine path foundation was successfully condensed, and she broke through to the 4th-level Divine Lord realm as a matter of course. Chapter 30-36. Swoosh. Zhen Hong sat cross-legged, closing both eyes to revolve and cultivate. Her entire body bloomed with soaring golden light, emitting sacred dragon aura undulations. Dazzling golden light boiled and surged, condensing into the scene of 9 golden dragons circling and dancing. Such a gorgeous scene was precisely the light and shadow of her divine Tao foundation condensing and breaking through to the 4th-level Divine Lord realm. She suppressed the surprise and excitement that filled her, trying her best to maintain calm, revolving and stabilizing her foundation and divine power. This breakthrough made her become a middle-level Divine Lord. Not only did her strength advance by leaps and bounds, her divine Tao also underwent a change. Successfully awakening the Dragon God bloodline, her divine Tao cultivation would be a smooth path in the future. Furthermore, how far she could walk on the path of divine Tao, what peak she could climb to, there were also limitless possibilities. A true nirvanic rebirth, shedding one's mortal body and exchanging one's bones. As for the white dragon, expended 90% of his divine power and soul force, and even paid with 18 dragon race ultimate arts. His complexion was already pale as paper, his entire body dripping with sweat, sprawled on the ground like a pile of mud, gasping for breath. I feel like my body has been hollowed out. Even if he was so tired, he also did not forget to be mischievous. He even blinked at Ji Tianxing and transmitted his voice weakly, "Master, this disciple is filial enough, right? For your fortune, this disciple made such a great sacrifice. If you don't arrange a few beautiful little female dragons for this disciple in the future, it would be letting down this disciple's painstaking efforts." Ji Tianxing glared at him huffily. "Shut up, you, return to the divine pagoda and recuperate properly." Finished talking, he manipulated the 9 heavens 10 absolute pagoda, and put the white dragon away into the distorted spacetime. Thinking for a while, he took out a large pile of monarch-rank divine pills and source stones, and threw them beside the white dragon to express comfort and reward. After that, he quietly left the secret chamber. Zhen Hong stayed in the secret chamber and continued to revolve and regulate his breathing, stabilizing his foundation. 4 hours later, the sun had risen. A new day had arrived. Ji Tianxing was currently resting in the room when the guard outside reported that the third prince came to visit. Hence, Ji Tianxing got up and headed to the study to meet the third prince. The two of them greeted each other and took their respective seats. The third prince smiled and said, "Mr. Tianxing, the divine blood ceremony is about to begin. How are your preparations going?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Of course, no problem. I can join the battle at any time." The third prince waved his hand and said with a chuckle, "That won't be necessary. This year's divine blood ceremony will be organized by this prince." Today was the first day. There would be a grand ceremony and ceremony. It would take a long time before the arena competition would begin. Moreover, the arena competition on the first day was only to determine the top 30. This prince has already made arrangements for you. You don't need to participate in today's competition. You can directly enter the top 30. Tomorrow morning will be the time for you to show your prowess and suppress everyone. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "Third prince, I have something to ask of you. If you have something to say, just say it." The third prince nodded without hesitation. Ji Tianxing asked, "For those who want to participate in the Challenge Arena tournament, the registration ended yesterday, right?" The third prince nodded and said, "That's right. The registration condition is to reach the Divine Lord realm within 1,000 years of age. There are not many people who meet this condition, and all of them are famous geniuses. In the entire Divine Kingdom, there are no more than 500 people, right? As of yesterday evening, there were a total of 181 people who signed up." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Can you do me a favor and add the name of Miss Zhen Hong?" The third prince suddenly frowned and said with a startled face, "Miss Zhen Hong also wants to participate in the arena competition? This is her idea or your decision?" Ji Tianxing did not answer. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Is there a problem?" The third prince spread his hands and said indifferently, "Although Miss Zhen Hong meets the registration conditions and can be considered a genius with outstanding talent, but in every arena competition, those geniuses who can enter the top 10 are all middle-level divine lords. Even if she participates, it is impossible for her to enter the top 10 and she will be seriously injured. This is meaningless and will affect the normal affairs of the Longwind courtyard." Ji Tianxing said with a chuckle, "Just last night, she broke through to the 4th stage and became a middle-level divine lord." The third prince was shocked and showed an expression of disbelief. "How is this possible? Didn't she just get seriously injured and her injuries have not even healed? How did he manage to break through to 4th stage realm in just one night?" Ji Tianxing was about to explain the whole story. At this time, the voice of the guard came from outside the door. Reporting to young Master Tianxing, "Miss Zhen Hong requests an audience." Ji Tianxing looked at the third prince and said with a smile, "Since she is here, you should see for yourself." As his voice fell, Zhen Hong, who was wearing a red armor, stepped into the study. When she stepped through the door of the study, she had to bend down to avoid hitting the door bar. After all, this door was designed for the divine race and was only 10 feet tall. and Zhenhong's height had reached 1.5 feet. When she entered the study, Ji Tianqing and the third prince, who were sitting, felt a sense of oppression. After all, not only was her body slender and tall, but her curves were also abnormally hot, especially the proportion of her legs, which reached 60% of her body. Although her whole body was wrapped in red armor, only her shoulders were exposed. But her face was more beautiful, and her facial features had a kind of determined heroic spirit. Her temperament became more special and charming. Moreover, the short little golden dragon horn on her forehead looked a little silly and cute. The third prince was dumbfounded on the spot. He stared straight at Zhenhong and stood up with a bang. He was so shocked that he forgot himself. You are Miss Zhenhong? The third prince pointed at her and asked in shock, stuttering a little. No matter how calm and experienced he was, he could not bear such a big shock. In just a short time, Miss Zhenhong had become like this? He found it hard to accept. Zhenhong was also stunned for a moment before she bowed to him. Zhenhong greets the Lord. Then she looked at Ji Tianqing and bowed deeply. She said sincerely, Zhenhong will remember young master's kindness for giving me a new lease of life. I will never forget it. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked, has your foundation been stabilized? Can you adapt? Zhenhong quickly replied, young master, don't worry. After 4 hours of recuperation, I can control myself freely. The feeling of being reborn is really wonderful. That's good. Ji Tianqing looked gratified and said, just now, I told the third prince to add your name to the list and participate in the divine blood ceremony. What do you think? Zhenhong was stunned for a moment. Then she showed a grateful look and quickly nodded. Thank you for your support, young master. I will do as you say. Zhenhong also wants to try and see how big the gap is between me and the top 10 geniuses. The third prince stared blankly at the two of them, asking and answering questions. His expression was a little strange, and he even felt that it was a little ridiculous. Why do they act like master and servant? It seems that Zhenhong only has eyes for him and treats him as her master. This prince is clearly her master. Feng Yun Reading Network. Chapter 30-37. For a long time, Zhenhong had always obeyed orders. Her personality was simple, kind, courageous, and determined. The third prince couldn't understand how Ji Tianqing could capture Zhenhong's heart in just a few days. With Ji Tianqing present, he, the real master, seemed superfluous. So embarrassing. Could it be that Zhenhong became like this and became a mid-level divine lord because of Ji Tianqing? Thinking of this, the third prince was even more shocked and felt that it was incredible. Young Master Tianqing, how did you do it? He stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze, his eyes full of amazement. Ji Tianqing said with an indifferent expression, this is her original appearance. It's just that she hasn't awakened. What I did was just to give her a push and help her awaken sooner. Although he said it casually, the third prince was well aware of how miraculous this was. He saved Zhenhong and devoted hundreds of years to cultivate her, but he didn't see the problem with Zhenhong's bloodline. As a result, Ji Tianqing helped Zhenhong awaken after only a few days. This was a real powerhouse. Awesome! After holding back for a long time, the third prince could only use these two words to describe Ji Tianqing. The noble prince who spoke elegantly actually said such vulgar words. One could imagine how big of an impact this matter had on him. After calming himself down, the third prince said expectantly, since young master has helped Zhenhong and given her such an opportunity, then she will definitely be able to soar to the sky in this competition. Let's go watch the ceremony together. This prince will add Zhenhong's name and see how amazing her performance is. The three of them didn't delay any longer and hurriedly left the study and walked out. At the gate of Changfeng Courtyard, the third prince's carriage was already waiting. 8 white-winged Pegasi pulled a large and luxurious carriage, accompanied by hundreds of people. The third prince, Ji Tianqing, Zhenhong, and others boarded the carriage one by one and drove toward the city square. Along the way, they passed through several wide streets, which were bustling with noise and excitement. There were people everywhere. Gods of all shapes and sizes were jostling shoulder to shoulder. Countless commoners and gods converged into a surging tide and surged toward the plaza in the center of the city. It was very difficult to travel on the road, So 8 Pegasus pulled the carriage into the sky. Not long after, the carriage arrived at the plaza in the middle of the city. As early as 2 days ago, the venue in the square had been set up. At this moment, the square with a radius of tens of miles was already packed with people. At a glance it looked like an endless tide. The square was surrounded by empty space. Ordinary citizens and protoss could only watch the ceremony from the ground. In the center of the square, there was an arena with a radius of 10 miles, enveloped by a sky-blue ball of light. Directly above the arena, there was a ceremonial platform with a radius of 3,000 feet. The decorations were sacred and solemn. There were hundreds of imperial guards guarding the ring and the ceremonial stage. Around the square, there were also tens of thousands of armored and sword-wielding guards standing there like statues. The presence of the imperial guards was like an invisible shackle, making everyone behave and not dare to cause trouble. Around the ceremonial stage, there were 4 viewing platforms suspended in the air in the 4 directions of north, south, east, and west. The viewing platforms were spacious and comfortable, and could accommodate tens of thousands of people. Only the relatives of the emperor, the upper-class nobles, and famous experts were qualified to sit on the platforms to watch the ceremony. When the third prince's carriage arrived, there was a burst of cheers and discussion in the square. After all, the second prince and the third prince had been fighting for many years. Both of them had done everything they could to create a glorious image in the court and among the commoners. They had a large number of supporters. The carriage flew to the northern viewing platform and stopped. The third prince, Ji Tianqing, and the others walked out one by one. When they saw Ji Tianqing and Zhen Hong, countless commoners, protoss, and nobles looked at them curiously. Most people did not recognize Ji Tianqing, nor did they recognize Zhen Hong, who had just completed his transformation. Everyone was puzzled. Who were these 2 people? Why were they with the third prince? Were they from the hidden nobles? Or were they disciples of the big sects or aristocratic families that did not show themselves? Or were they the top geniuses that the third prince had just recruited? After everyone was seated, the carriage left. This viewing platform was in the best position. It could overlook the entire square and see the ceremonial stage and the arena clearly. Only the relatives of the emperor and important officials of the country were qualified to sit there. The second prince and his subordinates had already taken their seats on the viewing platform. Over 100 people were seated around the second prince, and they were chatting in low voices. Seeing the third prince arrive, the second prince did not look at him, but he nodded at Ji Tianqing and greeted him in a subtle way. At this time, the viewing platforms in the east, west, and south were already full. There were not many seats left. The third prince first found the officiator in charge of the ceremony and quietly added Zhen Hong's name. Then, seeing that the time was almost up, he got up and flew to the ceremonial stage. The second prince, the princesses, and the idle lords of the older generation followed him to the ceremonial stage. There were more than 20 people, all of whom were direct descendants of the Duanmu family. They were also the most distinguished members of the royal family. Everyone was dressed in splendid clothes. They looked dignified and solemn as they lined up on the ceremonial stage. Then, as the host of the ceremony, the third prince began to read the divine scripture and the imperial edict. This series of content was not only tedious and lengthy, but also difficult to understand. But the general meaning was nothing more than to describe the significance of the divine blood ceremony, and let the people remember the deeds of the martyrs. Ji Tianqing listened absent-mindedly. His eyes swept across the many members of the royal family and found something interesting. The fifth prince did not attend today's ceremony. Haha. It seems that the boy's injuries are too serious and the poison has not been removed. Also, his legs were crippled by me. He looks too pathetic and is not suitable to attend such an occasion. Since that is the case, would the king still appoint a prince who has lost his power and his legs as the crown prince of the divine kingdom? As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a playful smile. He subconsciously turned his head and looked around. He saw a familiar face in the center of the eastern viewing platform. As always, he was wearing a black dragon robe with golden threads and a luxurious golden crown. His face was fair and handsome. It was Prince Lian. When he looked at Prince Lian, Prince Lian also sensed his gaze and looked at him with a cold gaze. Their eyes met. Both of them had cold expressions and sharp gazes. The hostility and murderous intent in their eyes made the people around them feel cold and couldn't help but tremble. Zhenhong was next to him. Sensing the abnormality, he looked at Prince Lian in confusion. He lowered his head and asked Ji Tianqing through telepathy, "Young master, what's wrong? Is that person your enemy?" Ji Tianqing looked away and nodded calmly. Zhenhong pursed his lips and said firmly through telepathy, "Young master, please consider the overall situation and be patient for the time being. After the divine blood ceremony, Zhenhong will definitely help you eliminate the enemy." Ji Tianqing showed a hint of surprise and asked with a chuckle, "Do you know who that person is?" P.S. Readers, I am He Wuhan. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, zero ads, and multiple reading modes. Please follow. Book friends quickly follow. Chapter 30-38. Zhenhong shook her head. Obviously, with her identity and status, she could not come into contact with Prince Lian. Ji Tianqing smiled and comforted her. "Don't think too much. Just do your own thing." Zhenhong pursed her lips and did not say anything. She knew that she was still too weak to help young Master Tianqing. She silently made up her mind to live up to young Master Tianqing's expectations. She had to become a powerful high-level divine lord in the shortest time possible. She could not tarnish the reputation of the dragon gods. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. After the third prince finished reading the divine Bible and the edict, he led the royal family members to kneel and kowtow to the spirits of their ancestors. After this series of tedious things were done, the royal family members left. Then, the arena competition that the Million God clan members and commoners were looking forward to the most was finally about to begin. The second prince and the third prince stayed on the stage. The third prince announced with a solemn expression and a booming voice, "I will be the host of this year's divine blood ceremony. Second brother and everyone will supervise the entire process. Now I announce the start of the arena competition. A total of 182 young elites have signed up for this year's divine blood ceremony. The competition will be decided by drawing lots. 2 people will fight in public. The loser will be eliminated and the winner will advance. In the process of the competition, it is strictly forbidden to borrow external forces, to have deaths, and to cheat." The third prince announced the rules of the competition. In fact, it was no different from the arena competition of previous divine blood ceremonies. The millions of Protoss present were well aware of the rules and regulations. After the ceremony, the drawing of lots began. The third prince took out 152 golden jade slips and threw them into the sky. Each jade slip flashed with golden light and flew in the sky, forming a huge ball of light. The appearance and aura of these jade slips were exactly the same. The only difference was the name engraved on the jade slips. When the jade slips filled the sky and danced for a while, the order was completely disrupted. Even the third prince could not remember them clearly. The second prince finally made his move. He kept shooting out beams of divine light and pulled out jade slips from the golden ball of light. The first battle, Jia and I from Xianshui Commandery versus Gu Chongfeng from Chunyang Commandery. The second battle was between Lu Gu from Tongwen County and Li Su from Black Wind County. The third match is from. Every time he drew out 2 jade slips, the second prince would open them and read out the names on the jade slips. Behind him was an Imperial Army commander, who was in charge of recording the participants and the order in which they fought. As for the god race commoners in the square, every time they heard the name of a young genius, there would be a burst of exclamations and discussions. Obviously, the young geniuses who were qualified to participate in the grand competition all had quite a reputation among the common people. After a long time, when the second prince read the 71st battle, he frowned slightly and glanced at the third prince from the corner of his eye. But he didn't say anything and just announced loudly as usual, "The 71st battle, Zhenhong from Bloodflame County versus Tang Yu from Dark Blood County." Obviously, the second prince knew that Zhenhong was not on the list. Now that she was on the list, it was most likely added by the third prince at the last minute. Although this was not in line with the rules and was a form of favoritism, But he and the third prince were not gentlemen and had done this kind of thing countless times. He wouldn't use this trivial matter to attack the third prince. He just couldn't understand what the third prince was doing. He actually let the captain of the Last Wind courtyard participate in this grand competition? Wasn't this looking for a beating? When the time comes, they would lose miserably, lose face for the Last Wind courtyard and slap the third prince's face. Perhaps the third prince would become the laughingstock of the royal city. After reading the battle list, the second prince put down all the jade slips. He and the third prince stood on the ceremonial stage to supervise the grand competition. The sky blue defensive light shield under their feet also opened a door. 2 young talents flew out of the crowd and went up to the arena to start the battle. Those 2 were Jia and I and Gu Changfeng. As the first battle of this grand competition, the 2 were under a lot of pressure in front of millions of people and were very cautious. First, they probed each other and attacked. After hundreds of moves back and forth, they tested each other's details and began to speed up the pace of their attacks. For the millions of gods and the common people, the battle between the 2 was very exciting and attracted cheers from time to time. However, the nobles and experts on the 4 viewing platforms did not react to it at all. As for the 2 princes on the ceremonial stage, they didn't even have the interest to take a second look. After all, the strength of the 2 young geniuses was only at the second level of the Divine Lord realm. The second prince was bored, so he turned his head to look at the third prince and asked with a faint smile, "Is it necessary to spend so much money and take such a big risk for a captain of the maidservants?" The third prince certainly understood what he was talking about. He was not angry. He smiled confidently and pretended to be unfathomable. "How can you guess this king's mind?" The second prince curled his lips and sneered. "With your little mind. Do you really think this king doesn't understand? Isn't it just a honey trap to win over young Master Tianqing? However, this king really admires you. In just one day you transformed Zhen Hong into that appearance. When Zhen Hong entered the arena just now, I don't know how many pairs of eyes were staring at her. I don't know how many rich and powerful children and young geniuses are amazed by her." The third prince was a little smug, but he didn't expose the truth. He said with a smug face, "So, second brother, just wait for the show." "What?" The second prince raised his eyebrows and sneered. "Don't tell me you still have hope that Zhen Hong can make it into the top 10. Why not?" the third prince asked. The second prince turned around and looked at Zhen Hong carefully. Then, he stretched out 4 fingers and said to the third prince, "For counties. Do you want to bet?" The 2 brothers had a tacit understanding. The third prince naturally understood what he meant. Whoever lost would have to give up 4 counties and withdraw all their forces and properties. Although it wasn't a shocking bet, it would still hurt the third prince. The third prince pursed his lips and nodded heavily. "Okay, this king will bet with you. Haha, you're really confident." The second prince couldn't help but look at him in a new light. He sneered and said, "Unfortunately, confidence is not enough. You're destined to lose." "What do you mean?" The third prince was calm and composed as he asked with a smile. The second prince's smile was somewhat mocking. He said slowly, "In recent years, this king has secretly recruited more than 3,000 young talents and has been secretly training them. This king has selected more than 20 geniuses with the strongest talent and potential in this arena competition. Not only this king but also Ol Wu. Although he is seriously injured and in seclusion, he can't attend this ceremony. But in order to train his trusted subordinates, he didn't hesitate to put more than 30 young geniuses into this competition. Let's put it this way, the top 10 spots are all taken by us. Your Zhen Hong girl has no hope at all." Chapter 30-39. The third prince's face suddenly turned ugly. Although he also had the intention to cultivate a team of forces. 9 young geniuses were stuffed into the slots for the arena competition this time. Including Zhen Hong, there were a total of 10 geniuses, all of whom were his trusted aides. But now he realized that compared to the second prince and the fifth prince, he was simply too kind. There were only a total of 180 geniuses who were qualified to sign up. The second prince and the fifth prince's trusted aides were more than 60 people, occupying 1/3 of the quota. This arena competition was simply organized for the two of them. At that time, 9 out of the 10 geniuses who could receive the baptism of the blood-flame sacred tree would be their people. The third prince also felt that Zhenhong definitely had no hope. The most important thing was that he would definitely lose the bet and give up the territory of 4 counties. This time he would lose miserably. The third prince sighed silently, his mood became heavy, and his expression was somewhat gloomy. Seeing his reaction, the second prince's mood was incomparably carefree, and even hummed a little tune. The third prince knew that this was deliberately angering him, but he could not vent his anger, so he could only suppress his anger. At this time the first round of the tournament ended. Jia Anai and Gu Chongfeng exchanged more than 1,000 moves, and fought for half an hour before the winner was finally decided. Gu Chongfeng lost to Jia Ni's sword by a difference of 1 move, and left the stage full of regret. The whole place was filled with cheers, and Jia Anai opened his arms to embrace the sky, his face brimming with a victorious smile. On the viewing platform, Zhenhong had been watching the battle attentively, watching carefully. Seeing Ji Tianqing looking around with a worried look, she could not help but ask, "Young master, why are you not watching the battle?" "Oh." Ji Tianqing came back to his senses, waved his hand and said, "It's just chickens pecking at each other, nothing to watch." Zhenhong still had a lot of things to say, but she choked back, not knowing how to continue. Originally, she wanted to persuade Ji Tianqing, although he was predetermined to be in the top 30, and did not need to participate in today's tournament. But he needed to know more about his opponent so that he could win more easily. But now it seemed that all these were nonsense. So, she kept silent and continued to watch the second round seriously. The sun continued to rise and time passed quickly. Unknowingly, it was already noon. The grand competition had already progressed to the 30th round, and more than 30 geniuses had successfully advanced. During this period of time, over 70 young geniuses fought intensely, and they presented many brilliant scenes. 7-colored divine light that blotted out the sky, dazzling and ever-changing divine light, and endless loud noises and explosions rang out in the arena for a long time. The millions of God clan warriors in the square were dazzled and excited. While everyone was enjoying the feast for their eyes, they also gained a lot of enlightenment from it. Cheers and worried screams could be heard one after another. Zhenhong watched every match carefully and paid special attention to the dozen or so winners. Taking advantage of the fact that the next match had yet to begin, she frowned and pondered, analyzing the characteristics and weaknesses of those young geniuses. At this time, Ji Tianqing patted her leg and asked, "What are you thinking about?" It couldn't be helped. When they sat together, there was a height difference of 2 meters. Even if Ji Tianqing wanted to pat her on the shoulder, he would have to jump up. Therefore, he could only find a place where he could reach. "Young master, there are a dozen or so young geniuses who are very strong. I'm analyzing their weaknesses and thinking of countermeasures." Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, "Don't be so nervous. Why are you thinking so much? None of the people on the arena today are a match for you. Your real opponents are all in the top 30. Huh? Zhenhong was quite surprised and said uneasily, "Young master, do you really think I can make it into the top 30? Ji Tianqing shook his head. "Not the top 30 but the top 10. Zhenhong. Degree what? You're not confident?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows when he saw her dazed expression. Zhenhong became even more uneasy. She lowered her head and murmured, "You have such high expectations of me. I'm really afraid I'll disappoint you." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Don't think so much. When you get on the arena, don't think about your opponent's moves, attributes, and weaknesses. You just need to focus and use all your strength to execute the Dragon Tribe's ultimate techniques that you've just mastered. The battle will be over. You're worrying so much now because you don't understand how strong you are. When you enter a berserk state and transform into a female T-Rex, you'll be so strong that even you are afraid of yourself." Zhenhong was stunned again. Oh, seeing her dazed expression, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but reach out and flick her forehead. Unfortunately, he couldn't reach her and could only withdraw his hand awkwardly. "Young master, what's wrong?" Zhenhong looked at him in confusion. After thinking for a moment, she understood and took the initiative to bend down and lower her head, placing her forehead in front of him. Ji Tianqing was speechless. He said in a bad mood. Close your eyes and don't observe the battle. Revise your ultimate techniques. Yes, young master. Zhenhong nodded. As expected, she closed her eyes and began to review the dragon tribe's ultimate techniques. The sun gradually set in the west. 2 hours later, it was finally Zhenhong's turn to go on stage. The 71st battle was between her and Tang Yu of the Dark Blood County. When Zhenhong, dressed in crimson armor, stepped onto the stage with a solemn expression, scattered cheers sounded in the square, mixed with ear-piercing whistles. Moreover, all of them were young men with dazed expressions and dazed eyes. It was obvious that the people didn't recognize Zhenhong in her dragon girl form. Those young men cheered only because of her beauty. As for her opponent, he was an out-and-out young genius. He was dressed in a green robe and wielded a sword. His long hair fluttered in the wind. His face was handsome, and his temperament was elegant. Most importantly, his strength had reached the 4th level of the Divine Sovereign realm, ranking him among the middle-level Divine Sovereigns. This person stepped on the sky and calmly stepped onto the stage, causing countless people to cheer. There were also many God tribe women who excitedly shouted his name, like a group of little fangirls. Without a doubt, Tang Yu was one of the best of the younger generation and was very famous. He wasn't just famous in the Dark Blood County. In recent decades, he had mingled in the royal city and made a name for himself. In the hearts of countless people, the result of the battle between these two would be decided in less than 100 breaths. Tang Yu would undoubtedly win. After the two of them stepped onto the stage, they simply bowed and greeted each other, then attacked. Tang Yu was naturally elegant and graceful, waving his sword and displaying his divine powers. He only used 80% of his strength, preparing to test the waters with a few moves before using his full strength to defeat Zhenhong. In this way, not only did he take care of Zhenhong's face, but he also maintained his own image. However, Zhenhong obeyed Ji Tianqing's instructions. Without any distractions, she threw away all distracting thoughts and used the Dragon Tribe's ultimate techniques with all her might. Dragon Shadow Palm. Her body ignited with golden light that soared into the sky, erupting with violent divine power, and brazenly slashed out a sky full of dragon claw phantoms. Bang! 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 In just an instant, the sky full of golden dragon claw phantoms drowned Tang Yu, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. Chapter 30-40. Boom! Boom! Loud noises like muffled thunders exploded in the arena one after another. Tang Yu's sword Dao divine ability directly fell apart. He was also hit by the dragon claws and flew out in a sorry state. He drew an arc in the sky and fell tens of thousands of feet away. He struggled to get up, but his face was pale and he spat out 3 blood arrows in a row. In the end, he staggered and swayed a few times before he fell on the arena with a plop. It was not until then that the trembling arena gradually calmed down. The battle came to an abrupt end. Tang Yu was defeated by Zhenhong in one move. It was a real insta-kill. When the golden light dissipated, everyone could see the situation in the arena. Everyone was dumbfounded. Not only were the millions of Protoss collectively petrified, but they also stared at Zhenhong and Tang Yu, who was seriously injured and lying on the ground. Even the dignitaries and experts on the 4 viewing platforms were shocked. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Even the second prince and the third prince, who were standing on the stage, were stunned. Before this, there were few battles between geniuses that could cause such a reaction. Now Zhenhong did it. Of course, Zhenhong was also dumbfounded. She stood on the stage in a daze, looking at her right hand in a daze. Her eyes were filled with tears. At this moment, her emotions were very complicated and she was very excited. But she couldn't laugh. She just wanted to cry. It would be best if she threw herself into the arms of the young master and burst into tears. After a moment of silence, the audience burst into earth-shattering cheers and exclamations. Hundreds of thousands of people cheered in unison and discussed excitedly. The terrifying sound wave torrent caused the entire plaza to tremble. Oh my God! Am I hallucinating? What the hell? Tang Yu was insta-killed? Who is that beautiful and strong woman? How can she be so powerful? Oh my God! Tang Yu, the little overlord of the Dark Blood County, was insta-killed by a woman with one punch. That's why I said don't act cool in front of everyone. You'll only be cool for a second. Tang Yu is usually very dissolute. Now he has suffered a big setback. Let's see how he can attract bees and butterflies in the future. There was a lot of discussion in the square. The dignitaries and experts on the 4 viewing platforms were also whispering to each other, inquiring about Zhen Hong's identity. On the ceremony platform, the third prince came back to his senses and grinned proudly. Although his smile was a bit silly, after all he was also frightened. He guessed that after Zhen Hong's bloodline awakened, his strength, but he didn't expect him to be so strong. Oh, this was a completely different person. Is this the same Zhen Hong? The second prince's face darkened. He frowned and the corner of his mouth twitched. Third prince, you're so cunning. His heart ached because Tang Yu was one of his confidants that he had secretly trained. The third prince said proudly, beaming with joy, "This is called wisdom. Do you know how to play the pig to eat the tiger? You are a pig to begin with. Do you still need to pretend to be one?" The second prince glared at him. At this time, Tang Yu left the arena awkwardly. Zhen Hong also held back her tears and flew back to Ji Tianqing. She didn't sit down but bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing. 2 sparkling teardrops rolled down from the corners of her eyes and landed on Ji Tianqing's body. This scene caused the dignitaries on the viewing platforms to discuss and speculate in private. Ji Tianqing took her arm, pressed her to the seat beside him and asked, "So many people are watching. What are you doing? Why are you crying?" "Thank you, young master." Zhen Hong reached out to wipe her tears, but she couldn't stop them from flowing down again. "You were right. The power of the Dragon Clan's unique skill is beyond my imagination. In the past few hundred years I never dared to imagine that I could be so powerful. It was you who helped me awaken my bloodline and give me a new life. I'm no longer the Zhen Hong of the past." Seeing her so sad, Ji Tianqing subconsciously reached out his hand, wanting to pat her shoulder and comfort her. But it wasn't high enough. "Forget it. I'll just take my hand back." Next, 5 more matches were carried out in the arena. At this point, the first round of the competition was over. 76 geniuses advanced, and the other half were eliminated. The third prince loudly announced the list of those who advanced and allowed everyone to rest for an hour before continuing the second round of the competition. During this period, the people who advanced didn't dare to be distracted. They seized the time to circulate their energy and take pills to recover their strength. Zhen Hong wasn't injured, and she didn't use much divine power. After all, she wasn't mentally prepared for the battle to end. Therefore, she still listened to Ji Tianqing's arrangement and continued to review the 18 unique skills of the Dragon Clan. She was thinking in her heart, which unique skill should she use in the next round? Just as she was thinking over and over again and couldn't make up her mind, Ji Tianqing made the final decision. "You're still using that Dragon Shadow Palm. If you can defeat your opponent in one move, there's no need to drag it out until the second move. Also, don't expose your trump cards so easily." Zhen Hong came to a sudden realization and hurriedly nodded to express her understanding. Soon, the second round of the competition began. The second prince drew lots again, and 38 pairs were selected from the 76 young geniuses. This time, Zhen Hong was placed in the 37th match. Ji Tianqing was a little depressed. He frowned and muttered, "What kind of bad luck is this? I'm actually placed in the second last match? What's wrong, young master?" Zhen Hong was puzzled. Ji Tianqing explained, "Today's competition isn't good. If you go on stage earlier, we can leave after the competition." Zhen Hong was taken aback for a moment before nodding in agreement. "That's true. If we wait until it's dark, we'll delay your rest." She thought for a moment and asked, "Young master, why don't you go back and rest first? I'll go back after the competition." "No need, I'll wait." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "You continue to consolidate your foundation of the divine Tao. I'm going to take a nap." With that, he reclined on the chair and closed his eyes to take a nap. Zhen Hong didn't dare to disturb him. He could only silently adjust his breathing and work hard to consolidate his foundation. Ji Tianqing appeared to be taking a nap, but he was actually observing Prince Lian and the reaction in the palace. The fifth prince's men were crippled, and the experts and forces under his command had also collapsed. This was a huge blow to Prince Lian's plan. He already had a premonition that Prince Lian would soon make a move against him. In addition, the fifth prince was beaten to such a state. 2 days had passed, and the king must know the whole story. But what made him feel strange was that the king didn't react at all when his youngest son was beaten to such a state. Wasn't this too strange? Even if there was a reason, the fifth prince's injuries and poisoning were his own fault. But the king was the same as the top experts. He only recognized who had the bigger fist and didn't care about reason. The king pretended that nothing had happened, which made him more vigilant. Chapter 30-41. Time passed very quickly. At dusk, it was finally Zhenhong's turn to take the stage to compete. Young geniuses who could enter the second round of the grand competition were basically all middle-level divine lords. Occasionally, there were a few low-level divine lords, but they were also peak third-stage realm and grasped special secret techniques. Zhenhong's luck was not too good. Her opponent was stronger than Tang Yu. Not only did his strength reach peak fourth-stage divine lord realm, but he also grasped several powerful divine abilities and ultimate skills. Furthermore, this ordinary-looking young man was a trusted aide groomed by the fifth prince. The two people fought on the stage. The young man did not show any mercy, going all out the moment he made his move. But the outcome was destined long ago. Zhenhong used her full strength once again, executing that dragon shadow palm. Golden dragon claws that filled the sky slammed down, releasing a power that could obliterate heaven and earth. The divine art light shadow that the other party executed, the divine Tao laws released, all disintegrated under the dragon claws. Boom! 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 The young man's divine ability was destroyed, and he was sent flying back. However, his injuries were not as miserable as Tang Yu's. After landing, he spat out a mouthful of blood and could still continue fighting. Seeing this scene, Zhenhong had no choice but to use the second dragon race's ultimate skill, Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Following her angry roar, both fists ruthlessly struck out endless golden light, condensing into a mountain-sized dragon elephant phantom. This divine ability secret technique was exactly the same as the Dragon Elephant Divine Fist, executed by Ji Tianqing. The difference was that the Dragon Elephant Divine Fist executed by Zhenhong could not be mentioned in the same breath as Ji Tianqing. It looked the same on the surface, but the power was 10 times worse. But it was more than enough to defeat that young man. Boom! Crack! Amidst a shocking loud noise, the young man's divine ability was defeated. He was blasted out again, rolling and smashing at the edge of the stage. If not for the sky blue light shield blocking, he would have long been blasted flying to the plaza. This time, he lay on the ground with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices. He groaned in pain a few times and hurriedly admitted defeat. Fortunately, he admitted defeat in time. Zhenhong accumulated her full strength again, preparing the next ultimate skill. If he had been a moment later, he would have been beaten to a pulp by Zhenhong. Zhenhong only used 2 moves to easily win again. The square was once again in an uproar. Countless commoners cried out in shock and disbelief. The dignitaries and experts on the viewing platform also found it hard to believe. After these 2 battles, Zhenhong had become the most dazzling genius powerhouse present, attracting everyone's attention. Countless people were still talking about her even after the 38 Elders competition had ended. After that, the third prince announced the list of those who had been promoted. A total of 38 geniuses had advanced, and were qualified to participate in the third round of the competition tomorrow. Tomorrow morning they would compete with the top 30 geniuses in the arena. Today's competition had come to an end, and the people on the viewing platform left one after another. The commoners in the square also quickly dispersed. Ji Tianqing and Zhenhong were just about to get up and leave when he noticed a sharp gaze staring at him from the eastern viewing platform. It was as if there was a thorn in his back, making him very uncomfortable. He turned his head and saw that in the middle of the eastern viewing platform, Prince Lian was staring at him coldly. On the left and right sides of Prince Lian, there were 4 young experts. There were 3 men and 1 woman, all of whom were god monarchs of the 5th or 6th stage. Their brows were filled with an unruly aura. The 4 young geniuses were also coldly sizing him and Zhan Hong up, not hiding their hostility at all. Ji Tianqing glanced at the 4 people, turned around expressionlessly, and left with Zhan Hong. On the way back to Longwind Courtyard, Ji Tianqing sat in a luxurious carriage with Zhan Hong standing beside him. After a moment of silence, Zhan Hong asked, "Young master, that black-robed youth seems to have a deep hatred for you." The 4 young experts beside him also had strong enmity towards us. I guess that the 4 of them are also going to participate in the arena competition. Moreover, they should be the same as you. They are all in the top 30. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly with a look of approval. Your observation is very careful, and your analysis is also very correct. That's right. The black-robed youth is Prince Lian, and he is coming for me. As for the 4 young geniuses, they are all elites under his command. In tomorrow's arena competition, they will definitely attack us. If you meet them at that time, you must deal with them carefully. Don't let your guard down. Zhan Hong nodded to show that he understood and said worriedly, I have heard of Prince Lian's name several times. He seems to be from the imperial family of the Great Yin Empire. Young master, how did you provoke such a strong enemy? The other party hates you so much. Do you want to ask His Majesty to mediate? The matter between the 5th prince and Prince Lian was top secret, so Zhan Hong certainly did not know. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, There is nothing to mediate. You don't have to worry. I have my own countermeasures. Prince Lian is playing tricks in the arena competition, so there is nothing to worry about. Let's just rely on our own strength. What we really need to worry about is that after the divine blood ceremony, he will secretly play tricks. After a while, the carriage returned to the Changfeng courtyard. As soon as Ji Tianqing and Zhan Hong got out of the carriage, the guard at the door hurriedly came to report the news. Young master, Miss Ning has arrived and is waiting for you in the study. Ji Tianqing was startled for a moment. Then, he raised his eyebrows and his calm eyes softened a little. I know. Seiji nodded and brought Masahiro through the door to the study. Zhan Hong certainly knew that the Miss Ning mentioned by the guard was Princess Ning's niece, the first Miss Ning of Tianxue County. She was keenly aware that when Ji Tianqing heard the news, his eyes and mood eased a lot. When they were halfway there, Ji Tianqing looked back at her and said, You must be tired after 2 rounds today. You don't have to follow me anymore. Go back and rest. Tomorrow is the real fierce battle. You should consolidate your foundation tonight. Zhan Hong reflexively wanted to nod his head and say yes, but she hesitated for a moment and shook her head. Thank you for your concern, young master. Zhan Hong is not tired. It's Zhan Hong's duty to serve you. Ji Tianqing didn't say much and just let her be. Soon they arrived at the study. As soon as they stepped into the study, they saw an elegant beauty in a light green dress sitting at the desk and reading quietly. Under the warm gemstone light, her profile was quite beautiful and elegant. According to the aesthetics of the Bloodfire Divine Country, she was absolutely a beautiful woman. Miss Ning, you are late. Ji Tianqing walked towards her and greeted her with a faint smile on his face. Ning Xiyuan woke up with a start. She quickly put down the book, stood up and bowed. Greetings, young Master Tianqing. Sit down and talk. Ji Tianqing walked to the desk and sat down, facing Ning Xiyuan. Ning Xiyuan glanced at Zhan Hong and asked, Young Master, is this your personal maid? Chapter 3042. Ji Tianqing didn't have much of a reaction. When Zhan Hong heard those words, her heart skipped a beat and she was a little embarrassed. But she didn't utter a word, hoping that Ji Tianqing would answer yes. But Ji Tianqing's answer disappointed her. What personal maid? Miss Ning must be joking. Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained, She's called Zhan Hong, the leader of the maids in Changfeng Courtyard. I see. Ning Xiyuan nodded slightly, finally understanding the situation. Although she had been to Royal City many times before, but every time she visited her aunt, Princess Ning, she stayed in the 3rd prince's residence and had never been to Changfeng Courtyard. So she didn't know Zhen Hong. Ji Tianqing asked unintentionally, I heard from the third prince that every time you come, you stay in the prince's residence. Why did you come to Changfeng Courtyard? Why are you looking for me? Ning Xiyuan shook her head and said, I've already visited my aunt. Every time I stay in the prince's residence, I'm already bored. Since you're staying in Changfeng Courtyard, of course I have to come here. It's more convenient. Ji Tianqing didn't think much and asked about her cultivation situation. Zhen Hong listened silently and a little scheme popped up in her heart. Young master lives here. Miss Ning also lives here. More convenient? What does that mean? What's more convenient? Could it be that between young master and Miss Ning there's really... At this time Ning Xiyuan said, thanks to young master's help, my pain has been relieved. After taking the pill you gave me, my bloodline and innate talent had a qualitative leap. Not long ago, I broke through to the monarch god realm and now my foundation is stable. I have a premonition that in less than a year, I will be able to advance to the second-degree realm. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, this is called good preparation. Ning's bloodline is a quasi-king bloodline. But because of the existence of Heavenly Slayer, it suppressed your innate talent and potential. Now that Heavenly Slayer has been lifted, your accumulated potential for many years will be released and your strength will definitely increase explosively. Ning Xiyuan continued, it's a pity that I was still a step too late even though I rushed over. I just arrived in the capital today. After visiting Auntie, the arena tournament is almost over. Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, it is indeed a pity. If you had come a few days earlier, you could have signed up and tested your strength. Ning Xiyuan hurriedly waved his hands and said modestly, don't laugh at me, young master. If I participate in the competition with this bit of strength, I will only embarrass myself in front of everyone. I won't be able to make it in time for this year's ceremony. I can only wait 50 years before I try again. The two of them chatted back and forth talking about things that could be big or small. Zhen Hong stood quietly to the side and listened for a long time. Through their conversation, she gradually understood the relationship between Ji Tianqing and Ning Xiyuan. Only now did she know that Ji Tianqing had not only helped her awaken her bloodline, he had also helped the Ning clan resolve the bloodline defect. He had also given the Ning clan a new lease of life. This made Zhen Hong very shocked. She thought to herself, who exactly is young master? He actually has such unfathomable means? Previously, I thought that young master was interested in me and deliberately helped me awaken my bloodline. Now it seems that I was thinking too much. Young master has always been straightforward and upright. He is good at helping others and does not ask for anything in return. To us, it is a great opportunity that can turn our lives upside down and be reborn. But to him, it's just a trivial matter that he can do casually. The more Zhen Hong thought about it, the more she felt that Ji Tianqing was unfathomable. He was so mysterious that she could not see through him. But the more it was so, the more she rejoiced. To be able to meet Ji Tianqing was truly a blessing of 3 lifetimes. At the same time, she secretly made up her mind to follow Ji Tianqing no matter what. Even if she followed him to the ends of the world and wandered the 4 seas, it would be a great blessing. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. After Ji Tianqing and Ning Xiyuan finished chatting, he said goodbye and good night and prepared to rest. Zhen Hong also tactfully retreated and returned to her residence to meditate and adjust her breath. The night was silent. Changfeng Courtyard was quiet and peaceful. Early the next morning, the sun had just risen. Zhen Hong finished meditating. After washing up, she went to serve Ji Tianqing to get up. Unexpectedly, as soon as she walked to Ji Tianqing's residence, she saw that Ji Tianqing had already finished washing up and was leisurely eating breakfast with Ning Xiyuan in the living room. Miss Ning is even earlier than me? Zhen Hong paused and thought to herself, young master basically does not eat, and Changfeng Courtyard has never prepared breakfast. Those breakfast dishes are so exquisite and delicious. Did Miss Ning make them herself? Why is Miss Ning more dutiful than me, a maid? Thinking of this, Zhen Hong's expression was a little uneasy, and there was a little uneasiness in her heart. But she herself did not understand the source of the uneasiness. At this time Ji Tianqing saw her enter the living room, so he waved and said, Zhen Hong, come and taste Miss Ning's cooking. These snacks are all made with the best ingredients, which can benefit the qi, nourish the spirit, and condense the soul. Ning Siyuan also looked at her calmly and did not speak. A rich and powerful family like the Ning family had a deep-rooted concept of superiority and inferiority. Maids and servants were not qualified to sit at the same table with their masters, let alone eat at the same table. But since Ji Tianqing had spoken, Ning Siyuan naturally did not stop him and just kept silent. Zhen Hong quickly bowed and greeted the two, then said, "Young master and Miss Ning, please enjoy. Zhen Hong does not dare to break the rules, so I will retreat outside." After saying that, she bowed and was about to leave. This was the attitude a maid should have. Ning Siyuan withdrew her gaze, reached out and picked up a piece of pastry, and put it in Ji Tianqing's bowl. "Young master, please concentrate on eating. You have to participate in the arena competition later." Ji Tianqing did not answer. He reached out and grabbed Zhen Hong and pulled her to sit beside him. "Hurry up and finish eating. Don't waste time." Zhen Hong's wrist was held by him, but she could not use any strength and could not resist at all. Even if she sat down, she felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles, and her heart was uneasy. Ning Siyuan frowned slightly and looked deeply at Ji Tianqing and Zhen Hong. As intelligent as she was, of course she saw some subtle problems, but she kept her composure and ate in silence. This breakfast passed in an awkward and subtle atmosphere. A quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing took Ning Siyuan and Zhen Hong in a carriage and left Changfeng Courtyard for the square in the city. When the three of them went to the northern viewing platform, almost all the people on the 4 viewing platforms had arrived. The huge square was crowded with nearly 1 million Protoss people, and there was a hubbub of voices. Not long after, the second prince and the third prince arrived. The two of them went to the ceremonial platform and announced that the arena competition would continue. Next, the drawing of lots for the third round of the tournament began. There were a total of 68 young geniuses in this round of the tournament. The third prince threw out 68 jade slips, which flew back and forth in the sky and formed a golden ball of light. The second prince waved his hand and shot out beams of divine light, constantly drawing out pairs of jade slips. Then he announced the list of matches one by one. Zhen Hong was scheduled to fight in the 7th match, while Ji Tianqing was scheduled to fight in the last match. Chapter 30-43. The young geniuses who could enter the third round of the tournament were all powerhouses. Most of them were the second prince and the fifth prince's trusted aides. Zhen Hong's opponent was one of the young powerhouses under the fifth prince's command. Ji Tianqing's opponent was one of the second prince's trusted aides, a seated contestant whom the second prince had high hopes for. Originally, the second prince had planned to place more importance on this young genius after he entered the top 10 and was baptized by the blood flame sacred tree. But now it seemed that his luck was too bad. When he announced the battle between Ji Tianqing and Lu Kongyan, his heart was bleeding and his face was as cold as ice. Needless to say, even he could not defeat Ji Tianqing. How could Lu Kongyan be a match for Ji Tianqing? He would definitely be ground to the ground. After reading the name list, the second prince put down the jade slip with a dark face. Glancing at the third prince beside him, the second prince frowned when he saw the smirk on the third prince's face and the gloating look on his face. "Why are you so happy? Lu Kongyan is not the only trusted aide I've trained." The third prince smiled and said telepathically, "Lu Kongyan has been eliminated in this round. What about the next round? What about the next round? With Tianqing's strength and means, he's just a noob in the tournament. It just depends on who's unlucky enough to become his stepping stones." The second prince's eyes twitched and he said hatefully, "Why did you let him participate in the tournament? Isn't this unnecessary? Just use your connections and let him be baptized by the sacred tree. It's not that difficult." The third prince retorted righteously, "Second brother, you're wrong. Am I the kind of person who plays favoritism? Moreover, young Master Tianqing is righteous, confident and proud. Why would he use such a method to be baptized by the sacred tree?" The second prince rolled his eyes and sneered at him. He did not say anything else. At the same time, On the northern viewing platform, Ji Tianqing, Ning Siyuan, and Zhen Hong were discussing in low voices. The young geniuses participating in this round are all the top geniuses in the Divine Kingdom. If I'm not wrong, most of these people are the confidants of the princes, and they're secretly cultivating their forces. Don't worry, young master. Master didn't arrange much. If there really is a genius secretly nurtured by the master, I should be able to recognize him. Young Master Tianqing, there's no need to worry. You just have to fight with all your might. Your goal is to win the championship, so you'll have to eliminate a lot of geniuses. Ji Tianqing sat in the middle, Ning Siyuan sat on the left, and Zhen Hong sat on the right. The two women were both beauties that could topple cities, yet they were hugging Ji Tianqing in a very intimate manner. This aroused the envy and jealousy of countless people, and they secretly criticized him countless times. Coincidentally, the second prince, Duan Muxiong, was also there. How could he miss such a grand divine blood ceremony? He had been here the day before and watched the whole day. Moreover, he was a relative of the royal family, so he was also sitting on the northern viewing platform. His seat was not far from Ji Tianqing. They were only 3 rows apart, less than 100 feet away. Therefore, he could clearly see every move of Ji Tianqing, Zhen Hong, and Ning Siyuan. Even when the 3 of them were whispering to each other, their intimate expressions and actions did not escape his eyes. Yesterday, Duan Muxiong had been shown off for the whole day. He had watched Ji Tianqing and Zhen Hong being all lovey-dovey. Today it was even worse. Not only Zhen Hong, but even Ning Siyuan had come. The 2 women sandwiched Ji Tianqing in the middle, showing off their affection for each other throughout the whole process. Duan Muxiong was restless. His face was pale, and he glared at the 3 of them fiercely. His chest was burning with jealousy. However, the most infuriating thing was that Ji Tianqing and the other 2 were still as before, completely ignoring his existence. To Duan Muxiong, this was the greatest humiliation. He had completely lost the mood to watch the battle. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing, Zhen Hong, and Ning Siyuan. The angrier he was, the more he wanted to stare at them. However, the more he stared, the more his jealousy burned. Not long after, Zhen Hong went up the stage to compete. This time she used 3 moves to defeat her opponent. The audience cheered thunderously, and she became the focus of the audience again. When she returned to the viewing platform and sat down, Ji Tianqing actually whispered something in her ear. She did not know what they were talking about. Zhen Hong nodded repeatedly, as if he was shy, or as if he was thinking about something. When Duan Muxiong saw this, he was so angry that his chest rose and fell rapidly. His eyes were almost red. Bastard! What a shameless bastard! In broad daylight, in front of millions of people, he has no sense of shame and is whispering sweet nothings to Zhen Hong. Ning Siyuan, oh Ning Siyuan, are you blind? The 2 of them are right beside you, being intimate in front of you. How can you stand it? Duan Muxiong was filled with grief and indignation as he roared in his heart. He really could not understand how Ji Tianqing had managed to win the favor of Ning Siyuan and Zhen Hong. The most bizarre thing was that the 2 women were with him at the same time, and nothing happened. Duan Muxiong did not even dare to dream of this kind of happiness. However, Ji Tianqing had done it. His jealousy and hatred for Ji Tianqing had reached an uncontrollable level. At this moment, a young aristocrat beside him noticed that his emotions were in turmoil. He could not help but ask, "Second prince, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" The young aristocrat was dressed in a white robe and held a folding fan in his hand. He was dressed like a dashing prince. His name was Zeluo, and he was the son of the general of the south. He was one of the top nobles in Monarch City and was very close to Duan Muxiong. Duan Muxiong quickly suppressed his anger and forced himself to remain calm. He said, "It's nothing. I just couldn't help but feel my blood boiling when I saw how exciting their fight was." Zeluo secretly sent a telepathic message and said with a playful smile, "Is that so? Isn't it because you saw that nobody sitting on 2 peerless beauties and felt indignant?" Duan Muxiong was stunned. He turned to look at him and asked, "Brother Zeluo, do you feel the same way?" "Of course." Zeluo waved his fan out of habit and sighed. "Sigh. Noble young masters like you and me, who are of noble status and outstanding talents, can't even win the favor of the beauties. Instead, it's those despicable scoundrels who use some dirty tricks to win the hearts of the beauties. What's wrong with this world? Are we too pure and not shameless enough? Duan Muxiong nodded in agreement. He said angrily, yes. It's all our fault for being too gentlemanly and being restricted by so many rules. On the other hand, those bastards who were born lowly and had dirty means would resort to any means to please the beautiful woman. The funniest thing is that he has to curry favor with the beauties to have the right to do so. Otherwise, he would be like those lowly commoners, crowding in the public square with millions of people and looking up at us like a toad. Zelyuo could hear the hatred in his voice. He looked at Ji Tianxing and the other two with a playful gaze. Then, he raised his eyebrows at Duan Muxiong and sent a telepathic message to instigate him. Since you hate him so much, why don't you kill him? Do you still want to watch him walk in front of you? Chapter 30-44. Duan Muxiong was stunned for a moment before he shook his head with dim eyes. I can't defeat him. Not only could he not defeat him, but he was also completely defeated. Moreover, there were still remnants of the poison in his body that had yet to be removed. Even the tool to carry on his ancestral line had only grown out recently and had yet to fully recover. Whenever he thought of that incident, the shadow in his heart would grow infinitely. Zelyuo waved his folding fan again and chuckled. The weak work hard, and the strong work hard. Second Prince, there's no need for proud sons like you and me to do it personally. Duan Muxiong frowned and said gloomily, I also want to hire a strong man to kill him, but I don't meet his requirements. Previously, he was willing to spend 30 billion to hire the Evil Blood Palace to assassinate Ji Tianxing. However, the Evil Blood Palace was unwilling and wanted to add the Furious Blood Sacred Tree. That was the most precious treasure of the prince's residence. He did not dare to trade it. Zelyuo patted his shoulder and chuckled. Second Prince, a man should repay kindness and revenge as he pleases. Don't be timid, or you'll only be wronging yourself. Just like now, you can only stare and sulk as you watch that brat take away the woman you like. Money and treasures are just worldly possessions. As long as you can vent your anger and make yourself happy, just do it. You're the crown prince of the divine nation and the second grandson of the monarch. Don't you think it's too ridiculous? Zelyuo was a hedonistic son. He usually drank and went to brothels with Duan Muxiong. They were so close that they shared a pair of pants. Therefore, he casually blurted out these taboo words. Duan Muxiong fell silent. He stared at his feet with his head lowered and struggled internally. Zelyuo transmitted his voice again. These are my heartfelt words. This is what I do. That's why I can live a carefree life. In the past, there was a son of a princess who wanted to snatch the top courtesan from me. He even wanted to use underhanded means. I didn't say anything and sent someone to kill him that very night. Things got out of hand. My father's salary was deducted for 100 years, and he was scolded by the monarch. I was beaten half to death by my father and locked up for 10 years. But so what? Now that I've vented my anger and felt good, I won't regret it anymore. Then, he patted Duan Muxiong's shoulder and said earnestly, Second Prince, think about it carefully. Yes, Duan Muxiong replied without even raising his head. After a long time when he raised his head, his gaze had become firm, and there was no longer any struggle or hesitation in his heart. After an entire 4 hours, this round of the competition finally came to an end. The final battle began. A tall and sturdy young man in black armor with a broad back flew into the arena. This was a member of the Bloodflame divine race. He was over 3 meters tall and had a head full of purple hair. His entire body exuded a valiant aura. He stood proudly in the ring with his arms crossed in front of his chest. His face was expressionless. The Protoss in the square immediately cheered and shouted. Many of them began to whisper to each other and discuss the situation. It's Shuebufan. He's finally here. The 5th hero of the 10 heroes of the Monarch City, the best of the younger generation. The last time he showed himself was 2 years ago. Now that he's here again, he seems to be even stronger than before. I wonder who his opponent is. He's so unlucky and pitiful. I remember his name seems to be Tianqing. Why haven't I heard of this name before? That's right. This person has never fought on the arena before. He must be a backdoor entrant who's been internally selected to be in the top 30. Tsk. Tianqing will be brutally beaten by Xue Bufan later. He'll be defeated in 3 to 5 moves. Won't that be a slap to the faces of those nobles? Just as everyone was discussing, Ji Tianqing stood up from the spectator stand. Zhenhong looked at him and said with a smile, "Be careful, young master." Ning Xiyuan also reminded, "Young master Tianqing, don't be too anxious to end the battle. It's most important to preserve your strength." Ji Tianqing nodded and stepped into the sky, landing on the arena. His appearance caused the people in the square to discuss even more enthusiastically. That kid is Tianqing? Xue Bufan's opponent? He's actually from another race? He looks ordinary. He's definitely not Xue Bufan's opponent. That kid came out from the northern viewing platform. Could it be that his backer is a relative of the royal family? Who cares who his backer is? The arena competition relies on strength. He'll be beaten down later and leave the arena in humiliation. The commoners despise people like Ji Tianqing, who relied on his connections to participate in the arena competition. The commoners despised him the most. In fact, for some reason, countless people had a common enemy and treated him as an enemy. Hundreds of thousands of people were shouting, hoping that Xue Bufan would ruthlessly beat Ji Tianqing and make him lose face. Only in this way could the people vent their anger. This was also another way for the people to fight back against those high and mighty nobles. On the arena, Ji Tianqing and Xue Bufan stood 1,000 feet apart. Xue Bufan looked at him coldly and said proudly, "I'm Xue Bufan, one of the 10 heroes of the royal city. My master is the leader of the Qianji sect." Ji Tianqing had a smile at the corner of his mouth. After listening to him, he said. And then, Xue Bufan frowned and said with a sneer, "You're called Tianqing, right? I've never heard of your name and I don't know where you came from." Although you relied on some connections to enter the predetermined list and directly participate in this round of the competition. But I want to remind you that in the arena competition, swords and sabers have no eyes. Don't put on airs. If you don't want to be seriously injured and lose face, admit defeat now. Ji Tianqing's smile became even wider and asked, "Are you done?" Xue Bufan's sneer became even more intense as he said contemptuously, "What? You're not willing to accept it? You talk too much nonsense." Ji Tianqing shook his head and finally lost his patience. As his voice fell, he raised his right hand like lightning and slashed at Xue Bufan. Swoosh! It was a very ordinary palm and did not use any magical skills. However, that 100-feet palm shadow that cut through the sky contained more than 30 kinds of power of laws. Its speed was as fast as an aurora. Its power could destroy heaven and earth. And its momentum was like the sky collapsing and the earth sinking. In that instant, the space of the entire arena froze. Xue Bufan was suppressed by the invisible divine power, and his body stiffened on the spot. His expression was stunned, and his eyes were wide open, revealing a look of deep horror. However, his hand held the hilt of the sword, but it was too late to draw the sword. Boom! A deafening loud sound burst out. The 100-feet large golden palm shadow slammed into Xue Bufan, exploding with dazzling light that filled the sky. Among them, there was also a purple flower of blood mixed in. Xue Bufan flew 20,000 feet backward, slamming into the sky blue shield, and fell to the ground with a bang. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes closed a few times and then slowly closed. He fainted on the spot. The battle was over. The boisterous square instantly fell silent. Everyone had a dull face, staring at Ji Tianqing in horror, as if they had seen a ghost. The 2 princes on the ceremony stage had long expected this result. The 3rd prince was full of smiles and in high spirits. The 2nd prince looked depressed and couldn't help but sigh. "Xue Bufan, this bastard, why are you talking so much nonsense? Shut up now, right? Come, wonderful book house." Chapter 3045. This round of the competition was over. Another 34 young geniuses were eliminated on the spot. The second prince had suffered heavy losses, and his expression did not look too good. Similarly, many of the trusted geniuses that the fifth prince had secretly nurtured were also eliminated. After an hour of rest, the fourth round of the competition began. It was close to noon, and the sun was shining brightly in the sky. However, the nearly 1 million people in the square were patiently watching and discussing the battles. No one left early. Everyone knew that the young geniuses who could advance to this stage were the best of the younger generation. The following battles would be more and more exciting. Not to mention the scorching sun in the sky. Even if the sky was raining knives, they would still watch the entire competition. On the ceremony stage, the third prince took out 34 jade slips, and the second prince drew lots to announce the battle list. The names of the 34 young geniuses were read out one by one. Of course, the names of Ji Tianqing and Zhen Hong were included. Coincidentally, Ji Tianqing was the first to fight. His opponent was Bai Hao, who was also one of the 10 heroes of the royal city. Not only did this person come from a prominent family, but he was also talented. Moreover, he was the backbone of the second prince's faction, and also a trusted subordinate that the second prince had specially nurtured. When the second prince announced the battle list, the names of these two people were like a blow to his head, and his face immediately collapsed. At that moment, he wished he could chop off his hands, and roared angrily in his heart, "Damn! Can I still keep my hands? What kind of bad luck is this?" First Xue Bufan was crushed, and now Bai Hao is also going to be eliminated. These two people are elites who will definitely enter the top 10. Why am I so unlucky? Tianqing, you really are this king's jinx. The second prince was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood, but the third prince smiled even more brightly. He pretended to comfort the second prince. "Second prince, my condolences. It can't be helped. The trusted subordinates that you and the fifth prince have nurtured are all top geniuses. Now, 70% of the 34 geniuses are your people. Therefore, the chances of them bumping into Tianqing are too high. But I don't have such worries. After all, I only arranged 9 people, and 4 have already been eliminated. With only 5 people left, it's still very difficult to bump into Tianqing." The second prince pretended not to hear him and continued to draw lots to announce the list of matches. When he read the 15th match, his furrowed brows relaxed a little. The two sides of this battle were Zhen Hong in Yuewu City. He was also a famous peak genius in Yuewu City. Furthermore, he was a famous figure of the younger generation under the fifth prince. His talent, strength, and means were not far from Bai Hao's. The second prince felt slightly comforted as he thought to himself, "Fortunately, it was Old Fifth's men. This prince has suffered heavy losses, so Old Fifth won't have it easy either." Zhen Hong was also amazing. In the past, she was so ordinary that no one would pay attention to her. However, after hanging out with Tianqing for a few days, she had actually undergone an earth-shattering change, becoming a top-notch genius in a single leap. The limelight of this grand ceremony has been completely stolen by the two of them. Soon the list of names was announced and the battle began. A tall and sturdy young man in luxurious clothes flew out from the northern viewing platform. His figure landed gracefully on the arena. He was none other than Bai Hao. He held a black scabbard saber in his left hand, and his right hand hung by his side. He stared at the ground expressionlessly. If his opponent was someone else, he would definitely be in high spirits and full of fighting spirit. Unfortunately, he knew that his opponent was Tianqing, and his heart sank. When Ji Tianqing was fighting Xue Bufan, he had severely injured Xue Bufan and knocked him out with one move. Bai Hao had seen the entire process clearly from the viewing platform. He asked himself honestly, if he were Xue Bufan, he would not be able to change the outcome either. He would still end up the same way. He had even heard of Tianqing's name before the divine blood ceremony. After all, he was the second prince's trusted aide. In the past, Ji Tianqing had gone against the second prince and killed Princess Tianfeng, and many monarch god experts. Bai Hao knew about this. Therefore, he was feeling very complicated at this moment. In the end, he could only sigh with emotion. Damn it, Why am I so unlucky to encounter a plague like him? When he muttered this sentence, a white figure flashed in front of him. Ji Tianqing also flew across the sky and landed on the arena, standing 1,000 feet away from him. Bai Hao looked up with a gloomy face, and his eyes were vigilant and alert. Ji Tianqing looked at him with a faint smile and said, "Looking at you, you must have guessed the result. Why don't you admit defeat now and save me the trouble?" Bai Hao's mouth twitched, and his eyes became even more malicious. He shouted in a deep voice, "Win without a fight? Don't even think about it. I, Bai Hao, am one of the 10 heroes of King City. I am famous in the city and idolized by countless young protas. How can I admit defeat without a fight in front of so many people? Don't I care about my face and reputation?" After hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded seriously and said, "Well, your analysis is quite reasonable. In this case, I can only beat you until you admit defeat. At that time, you will be seriously injured, and like Xue Bufan, you will need at least 8 to 10 years to recover." Bai Hao frowned. After hesitating for a moment, he growled with a firm expression, "Even so, I will do my best to withstand at least 2 moves. I can withstand 1 more move than Xue Bufan, which proves that I am stronger than him." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You are ambitious. Then take this." After that, he slowly raised his right hand and clenched his fist to gather his momentum. Suddenly, a strong wind blew in the arena, and an invisible divine power surged wantonly. When a mountain-sized golden fist shadow appeared, the entire space in the arena froze. The great divine power suppressed Bai Hao, making his body bent and difficult to breathe. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, but he gritted his teeth and held on. His right hand held the hilt of his sword, and his eyes stared at Ji Tianqing, showing an incomparably tenacious will. He watched as Ji Tianqing raised his right fist and was about to punch him. At the critical moment, Bai Hao's eyes flashed with hesitation. Finally, he gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice, "Stop! I admit defeat." Ji Tianqing's fist was halfway out, but he had to stop. He looked at Bai Hao with a puzzled expression. "Didn't you have a backbone just now? Why did you change your mind in the blink of an eye?" Bai Hao replied expressionlessly, "Knowing that you are no match for him, you still insist on holding on. That's not courage, that's stupidity." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked again, "Didn't you say that you want to withstand 2 moves to prove that you are stronger than Xue Bufan?" Bai Hao replied with a dark face, "In the same situation where you made a move, he was seriously injured and unconscious, but I was unharmed. It turns out that I am still stronger." Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He asked through voice transmission, "Your master is the second prince, right?" Bai Hao was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion, "How do you know?" All these years he had never exposed his faction. He had always been secretly helping the second prince. Logically speaking, Ji Tianqing shouldn't have known. Ji Tianqing revealed a meaningful smile. "If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Your shamelessness is really the same." Chapter 3046. If it were anyone else who humiliated the second prince like this, Bai Hao would have beaten them up. However, the other party was Ji Tianqing. He could only suppress his anger and pretend that he did not hear anything. There was no other way. He could not beat him. "Goodbye." He cupped his hands expressionlessly and flew away without hesitation. Ji Tianqing felt that it was meaningless. He curled his lips and flew back to the viewing platform. The nearly 1 million God Clan citizens in the square were all confused and had dumbfounded expressions. Many people whispered to each other, asking and discussing, "What's going on? That's it? What a scam." That Bai Hao admitted defeat just as Tianqing was about to make a move. Did he pee his pants because of Tianqing's aura? Or did they already fight with their divine souls? Xue Bufan was defeated in 1 move. Bai Hao is not much stronger. It's natural for him to admit defeat. But isn't he too spineless? Xue Bufan took 1 move. He should be more manly when he lost. Yeah, Bai Hao surrendered without a fight. He was overwhelmed by Tianqing's aura. How cowardly does that sound? The people found it difficult to understand Bai Hao's actions. They were even more curious about Ji Tianqing. However, the second prince on the ceremony platform nodded secretly. A look of relief flashed in his eyes. Finally, there's a smart one. He's not as dumb as Shui Bufan. If he were to be sent up and knocked out by Tianqing, I would have one less lackey in the next few years. Soon the second battle began. The two young geniuses went up to the arena. They fought until the sky darkened and divine light filled the sky. After a quarter of an hour, the winner was decided. They left the arena one after another. The third battle began. Ji Tianqing was not interested in watching the battle. He was whispering to Ning Siyuan to help her solve her doubts. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of the two figures in the arena. One of them was a thin young man with a head of white hair. This immediately piqued his interest. He observed the battle expressionlessly. Zhan Hong, who was beside him, also stared at the arena with a serious expression, carefully watching the battle. Ning Siyuan was somewhat puzzled and asked via voice transmission, "Young Master Tianqing, didn't you say you weren't interested in watching the battle? Could it be that there's something special about the two geniuses on the stage that is worthy of your attention?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. He stared at the white-haired youth and said, "That guy is here to ambush us. We'll meet him soon." "Snipe you?" Ning Siyuan stared blankly for a moment before revealing an expression of disbelief. "What kind of genius is qualified to snipe you? According to my knowledge, there are only 2 or 3 people in the entire Bloodflame Divine Kingdom." Ji Tianqing smiled and said calmly, "Not only him. There are 3 other young geniuses who are targeting me. Of course, it's their mission to snipe me. Whether or not they succeed is another matter entirely." Ning Siyuan said without hesitation, "It will definitely fail. Those people are too whimsical." Although the white-haired youth's strength was very strong, his combat experience was very abundant, and he even grasped many powerful divine abilities and ultimate skills. Furthermore, his strength also reached the 6th-level Divine Lord realm. He only used 80% of his strength and easily won after exchanging 200 moves with his opponent. But in the eyes of Ning Siyuan and Zhan Hong, Ji Tianqing was a war god who had never been defeated before. Just based on those young geniuses participating in the battle today, none was his match, because he was already a pinnacle Divine Lord powerhouse. Competing in martial arts with these young geniuses was simply bullying people. 2 hours later, it was Zhan Hong's turn to go on stage. Her opponent was called Yu Wuqing, a pinnacle genius of Cloudy Sun County, a wealthy aristocrat with an illustrious family background. This person's strength reached the 5th-level Divine Lord realm and cultivated over 20 kinds of divine abilities and ultimate skills. He was more adept at lightning-fast ambushes. The two people exchanged blows on the stage. Yu Wuqing transformed into 7 phantoms, and his true body hid in a corner of the stage. He used incomparably dazzling assassination techniques to drown out Zhan Hong's figure. Zhan Hong couldn't find his true body for the time being, so she followed Ji Tianqing's instructions and used the dragon race's ultimate skills with all her might. As the saying went, a strong person could defeat 10 skilled people. She punched out with the dragon elephant divine fist and broke the divine art shadows that filled the sky, forcing out her opponent's true body. Yu Wuqing was very indignant and wanted to hide himself again to use an even more dazzling divine art. Zhan Hong was like a storm, continuously using 4 dragon race's ultimate skills. Dragon Shadow Palm, Heavenly Dragon Strike, and Soaring Dragon Slash were all used. The entire stage was filled with Golden Dragon Divine Light, and dragon roars echoed. Yu Wuqing was beaten until he covered his head and fled like a rat. He barely lasted 4 moves before being knocked to the ground. When Zhan Hong used the 5th move, he was severely injured and vomited blood, falling onto the stage. Yu Wuqing was defeated just like that. No matter how strange his divine art was or how fast his movement technique was, he couldn't withstand Zhan Hong's violent attacks. After all, Zhan Hong's dragon race's ultimate skills were too domineering and specialized in dealing with fancy moves. This round of battles finally ended. The 17 young geniuses advanced to the next round. Among them were Ji Tianqing, Zhan Hong, and the 4 intermediate godlords under Prince Lian. It was already afternoon, and the scorching sun was even hotter. The nearly 1 million God race members in the plaza were dazzled and delighted. No one was willing to leave. Soon, the second prince and the third prince finished drawing lots. Out of the 17 young geniuses, one was lucky enough to advance to the next round. The other 16 people were divided into 8 pairs to fight on the stage. This round of battles was very crucial. It was the moment that determined the fate of the contestants and tugged at their heartstrings. The victors would enter the top 9 and have the right to enter the Blood Flame Mystic Realm to receive the baptism of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree. The 8 losers would have to fight for the 10th place. The chances were slim. In the first battle, the second prince's confidant defeated a noble genius from the Tianxua County. The second prince's brows relaxed and his expression relaxed. He finally felt somewhat comforted. After all, in this round, Ji Tianqing's opponent wasn't one of his men. Instead, it was a genius from the 5th prince's faction, a white-haired youth named Yi Ningwang. The second and third battles continued one after another. The contestants were the elites of the elites. All of them had extraordinary strength and were proficient in all kinds of divine arts. Every battle was brilliant. All kinds of gorgeous, dazzling, bizarre, and strange divine arts were displayed on the stage one by one. The millions of spectators felt their blood boil and their spirits rise. They cheered excitedly from time to time. In the 5th battle, Zhen Hong stepped onto the stage again. Her opponent was a foreign race genius from the southern border. He was a skinny youth with the bloodline of the flame wolf. This person's aura was sinister and his willpower was tenacious and resolute. He had the characteristics of the wolf race's bloodline. Most importantly, his strength had reached the peak of the 5th degree realm. He was only one step away from the 6th degree realm. When Zhen Hong fought with him, the process was exceptionally difficult. From the beginning, she was suppressed by the flame wolf youth. The other party relied on his super-fast speed and rich battle experience to beat Zhen Hong back. After exchanging 10 moves, Zhen Hong finally erupted with great potential and used the powerful Heavenly Dragon Star Breaking Slash. Only then did she defeat the flame wolf youth's various divine arts and injure him, causing him to fall onto the stage covered in blood. However, the flame wolf youth wasn't defeated. He actually boiled his bloodline and took the risk to stimulate his potential, breaking through to the 6th level Divine Monarch realm. Chapter 3047. This battle was a battle that would determine their fate. If they won, they would enter the top 9 and receive the baptism of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree. The Flame Wolf youth was from a foreign race and could not become a noble in the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom. Naturally, he could not obtain too many cultivation resources and it was difficult for him to stand out. Therefore, he placed all his hopes on this grand ceremony. It was also because of this that he took the risk of burning his bloodline and risking his life. Fortunately, he successfully broke through to the 6th stage. Such tenacious willpower and terrifying wolf-like nature made countless people cry out in alarm. When he successfully broke through, everyone was boiling and erupted into earth-shattering cheers and shouts. Even the nobles and experts on the 4 viewing platforms looked at the flame wolf youth in a new light and admired him. Zhen Hong was under great pressure. Even her confidence was shaken. The flame wolf youth became even more ferocious and charged over wantonly, forcing her to retreat. Feeling helpless, she subconsciously turned her head and glanced at Ji Tianqing on the viewing platform. She wanted to know what Ji Tianqing's reaction and expression would be. If Ji Tianqing signaled her to admit defeat, she would rather give up the baptism of the sacred tree and immediately admit defeat. If Ji Tianqing supported her to continue fighting, she would never surrender even if she was seriously injured and unconscious. When she looked at Ji Tianqing, she saw a smiling face and a serious and focused gaze. Young master has never been interested in watching the battle, but he watched the entire process of my battle very seriously. Even if I lose, I can't let him down. This thought flashed through Zhen Hong's mind and she immediately became spirited and full of fighting spirit. At this moment, she saw Ji Tianqing's lips move silently. It was lip reading. She immediately understood. Ji Tianqing said 4 words. Reverse blood berserk. Zhen Hong's body trembled and her heart was filled with shock and disbelief. Young master actually wants me to use that trump card? Reverse Blood Berserk was one of the last trump cards of the 18 Dragon Clan's ultimate techniques. After using it, one's bloodline would flow backward and enter a berserk state. Not only would their appearance change, but their combat prowess would also increase by 5 times. Only the Divine Dragons and the Dragon Blood God clan could use such a powerful skill. After all, if an ordinary god race bloodline were to flow in reverse, they would definitely go mad and self-destruct or burn their bodies on the spot. Only the Dragon clan, whose physical bodies were incomparably strong, could unleash such a self-destructive divine ability. Didn't young master teach me not to reveal too many trump cards? Zhen Hong tried to figure out what was going on while he fended off the Flame Wolf Youth's fierce attacks. Could it be that young master is confident that as long as I use the inverse berserk divine ability, I can defeat my opponent? He had only exposed one trump card, but he could conceal even more trump cards? I understand now. After understanding Ji Tianqing's intentions, Zhen Hong no longer hesitated and immediately used Reverse Blood Berserk. Roar! She suddenly let out a low roar, and her entire body ignited with golden flames that soared into the sky, bursting forth with an incomparably violent aura. Then, nearly 1 million god race people witnessed with their own eyes the shocking changes that happened to her within the raging golden divine flames. Her originally tall and strong body actually expanded violently, expanding to a height of 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye. Her body was as big as a mountain, and she looked the same as before. She still had the appearance of a dragon god warrior, but she was wilder and more violent. Her entire body was covered with golden dragon scales, like a layer of natural golden armor. Her arms and legs bulged with smooth muscle lines, not only filled with strength, but also with a wild beauty. A golden dragon horn more than 30 feet long grew out of her head, and her face was also covered by golden dragon scales, revealing only a pair of blood-red eyes. Under her tailbone, a 60-foot-long 3-pronged dragon tail emerged. Her hands covered in dragon scales had also turned into sharp dragon claws. This was the appearance of the Dragon God clan after going berserk, and also Zhen Hong's strongest state. She stood in the sky, looking down at the tiny flame wolf youth, and her entire body burst forth with soaring dragon might and battle intent. Roar! With a piercing dragon roar, she swooped down like a meteor, charging toward the flame wolf youth. The flame wolf youth had long been shocked by her berserk state, and his pupils constricted, and he was on guard. At this moment he was suppressed by her berserk aura, and his battle intent weakened a lot, and his aura weakened a lot. Skywolf transformation. At this critical moment, the flame wolf youth no longer held back and used his trump card. He ignited the flame wolf bloodline again and turned into a 100-meter-tall red flame wolf, charging toward Zhen Hong with an indomitable will. In the next moment, the two giant creatures collided, and their strongest power exploded. Boom! An earth-shattering sound exploded in the arena, shaking the 9 heavens. Golden and crimson divine light blended and exploded, filling the entire arena. The arena shook violently, and the sky-blue shield kept fluctuating. Even the ground of the huge square was shaking, and countless people were shaken to the ground. But no one felt that it was dangerous. They were so excited that their blood was boiling, and they forgot where they were and cheered and shouted. After all, this was the most exciting and hot-blooded battle in this god blood ceremony. No matter the result, Zhen Hong and the Flame Wolf Youth were famous in the capital, and millions of God clan members would remember them. After a long time, the colorful divine light gradually dissipated. The arena regained its clarity, and the winner was decided. Zhen Hong stood in the sky, unharmed, and golden light flickered all over her body, like a goddess of war. No, to be exact, it should be the golden dragon goddess of war. Her expression was calm, and her eyes were emotionless. She looked at the ground without focus. Is this the ultimate power of the dragon god bloodline after the berserk state? Is this the berserk state that even I would be afraid of? She muttered to herself. Although it was a question, her tone was firm, and there was no doubt in it. She closed her eyes and muttered to herself, "So it is. Master never lied to me. This is the feeling of ultimate power, so good. At this moment, Zhen Hong finally realized her own strength and experienced the feeling of being a powerhouse. Her mentality also quietly changed and matured. From the obedient and humble maid captain in the past, she had finally become a descendant of the Dragon God clan. She had self-confidence, a desire for great power, and a vision for the future. She knew, from this moment on, she was no longer ordinary. The Flame Wolf youth's outcome was a little tragic. There were more than 20 wounds all over his body, and they were all deep to the bone. He lay on the arena covered in blood, twitching involuntarily and groaning in pain. He had already lost. The pain of the physical body was far less than the disappointment and pain in his heart. Why? Why did I meet her? He murmured with lifeless eyes, and his heart was filled with unwillingness. Originally, he could break through on the spot in the arena and reach the 6th level of the Divine Lord realm. This was already a miracle that shocked the capital. He would definitely defeat his opponent, successfully enter the top 9, and get the chance to be baptized by the sacred tree. Everything was so beautiful. From then on, his fate went against the flow, and he became a genius powerhouse that everyone looked up to. But unfortunately, that was still a dream. Now the dream was shattered. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.